Hey friends, before we dive into tonight's story, did you know that nearly 80% of the people who watch these videos aren't subscribed? If you're enjoying this kind of content, consider hitting the subscribe button. It really helps a lot, and it keeps these long stories going. Also, I'd love to hear from you. What time is it right now where you are, and which city are you listening from tonight? And if these stories help you sleep, feel free to tap the thanks button to support the channel. It truly means a lot. All right, let's get into it. We got a 911 call. The address was familiar. It was that long, winding drive up the canyon road to the ridge overlooking the lights of the city. Security had tightened their perimeter years ago. High walls, cameras in every corner, gates that required codes I'd never been given. But at 2:16 a.m., those gates swung open for my cruiser, lights flashing, siren silent. Dispatch had logged the call as residential panic alarm, then caller hang-up, then no answer. By protocol, that would have been enough to clear the scene. False alarm, human error, but I'd learned not to trust a log that ended in silence. I drove past the guard shack, nodded at the young private officer who stood behind reinforced glass. His uniform looked crisp under the sodium lights, his eyes wary. I tapped my badge on the swipe reader, and the gate clicked. The mansion rose ahead, its pale columns stark against the dark sky. A single light glowed in the second-floor window, too high for staff quarters, too lonely, like a single candle burning against the dark. I parked on the circular drive. The rain had started, soft at first, then a steady drizzle that blurred my windshield. I grabbed my gear, flashlight, radio, sidearm. The stone steps to the front door were slick. I knocked and announced, "LAPD, house alarm triggered. Anyone home?" The door cracked open from the inside, swinging on its hydraulic closer. No security guard had answered. The hallway beyond was still, the portraits on the walls motionless. "Ma'am," I called. No response. I swept my flashlight down the main hall. Marble floors, expensive rugs, a grand staircase curving up into shadow. I passed a side table where a crystal vase lay shattered. Fresh water still pooled on the floor. Broken glass glittered like stars. No notes, no footprints. I crouched to inspect, but the shards were drying quickly in the rain-cooled air. Someone had moved through here in a hurry, then wiped away their tracks. The living room door was ajar. Inside, plush sofas faced a massive fireplace. The embers were still hot, a dying glow. A woman's voice, faint, came from somewhere deeper. I radioed dispatch. "Unit on scene, female voice inside. No visible sign of intruder from the hall." I stepped across the threshold. It was ridiculously quiet except for the drip of water from my rain-damp coat. The faint voice turned into crying. I followed it to the sliding doors that led out to the terrace. Through the glass, I saw her, sitting on the cold stone with her knees drawn up, shoulders shaking. She wore a robe, dark hair plastered across her face. I recognized her silhouette. One of the most photographed pop icons of the decade. In the flesh, she was smaller, fragile-looking, like a porcelain doll left out in the rain. "Miss Caldwell?" I said softly. She looked up, trembling, eyes rimmed red. She whispered, "I pressed the button, but he never left. He's here, he's inside." She stood, backing away as if she might fall through the wet stone into the darkness. "I can't," a sob caught in her throat. I knelt beside her. "Ma'am, I'm Officer Connors. You're safe. Let's get inside." She stared at me. Confusion and relief mingled in her gaze. I offered my arm. She took it. As we stood, I glanced back through the glass. No footprints on the terrace. The wood deck beyond was spotless. No muddy shoes, no dragging marks. Inside, she led me to the foyer, where 2 more officers were waiting. They hung back when they saw who it was. We made introductions. She refused medical assistance, but asked for privacy. I radioed dispatch to hold all other units. Code 2 response only. VIP on scene, no media, no cameras. She nodded, grateful, but her eyes kept flicking toward the staircase. "Did you see him?" I asked. She swallowed. "Just in corners of my vision. Upstairs in the hallway, I heard him breathing." She shivered. "He used to live here before I bought the place." I nodded, filing that away. Ex-tenants turned stalkers. Classic. But something about her tone suggested this wasn't a rumor. It was real. We searched the ground floor. No forced entry, doors closed, windows locked. I checked the camera feeds on the security monitor, blank screens, all systems down. Then one flickered. Black and white grainy footage of the main hall, live feed, time-stamped 2 minutes ago. The screen glitched and went dark again. My radio crackled, static, then a clipped voice. "Unit 1, dispatch. Copy VIP down. False alarm canceled at 2:10 a.m. All units clear." But I hadn't canceled. No guard did. The log showed only the initial call. I keyed the mic. "Dispatch, this is Connors. Status is still active. We have a distressed female on scene and unknown presence." Silence, then soft click. "Copy that, Unit 1. No additional response. Like they wanted to move on. I went back to the foyer. She was leaning against the console table, staring at a framed photograph. A black and white image of her, and an unknown man smiling on a beach. He looked too familiar, someone I'd seen in the news. But in this photo, he looked content. Normal. Beneath it, the plaque read, LM, 1998. Her finger traced his face. I asked, "Who is he?" She looked up, eyes distant. "My first husband. Disappeared. No one ever found him." She swallowed. I thought I heard his steps." Her voice cracked. "But he's gone. He's been gone for 6 years." We moved upstairs. Each step creaked in the silence. I followed, scanning each doorway. The master suite door was ajar. I nudged it open. Dim lamplight. King-size bed untouched. Papers scattered on the desk. A single phone off the hook. I picked it up. Deadline. Then I heard it. Whisper, soft, sheathing the room like a breeze. I spun, but no one was there. She gasped behind me. I steadied her. "Let's clear the rest," I said. She nodded, trembling. At the end of the hall, the door to the private sitting room stood closed. She didn't need to say anything. I raised my flashlight, pushed the door. Inside, the walls were lined with mirrors. Cameras were installed in each corner, pointed at the room. All lenses blacked out, lens caps on. In the center, a chaise longue. On it, her robe folded neatly, as if someone had just stepped out. The only clue was a single drop of water on the floor, fallen from the ceiling. I shone my light up, no leaks. I knelt to inspect the droplet. It gleamed under the beam, a small perfect circle. Behind me, her voice hushed but urgent. "He's behind you." I turned. Nothing, just reflections. But in the mirror behind me, the man from the photograph stood, head tilted. Not exactly visible, more like a dark shape blocking the light. I raised my weapon, heart pounding. She screamed. I whirled. The chaise was empty. The dripping sound stopped. Silence thickened. Then I heard the radio on my belt crackle, but no one spoke. I tapped it. Dead. She was sobbing now. "We have to leave, please." I nodded, guiding her back to the staircase. As we descended, I glanced up at the mirrors, expecting him to follow, but the hall was empty. Outside, rain battered the steps. I opened the car door for her. She sank into the back seat, eyes wild. As I closed the door, I looked up at that window again, one light still on. I thought I saw a face in the glass, half smile. Then it vanished. I drove away, rain spitting across the windshield. Dispatch finally pinged my radio. Unit 1, status. I breathed out, cleared. No sign of intruder. Residence secure, false alarm. They acknowledged, then went silent. In my rearview mirror, the mansion disappeared into fog and night. I got home hours later, emptied my pockets on the hall table. Flashlight, notebook, sidearm. But in the pocket of my jacket was that photo, black and white, me and a woman whose eyes I didn't recognize. My hands shook as I stared at it. No date, no names. Just our faces looking back. Then I heard it. A faint click, like a line going dead. The memory of her whisper filled my mind. He's here. I shut off the lamp and lay awake, listening to the rain and the quiet that followed. We drove in silence. The rain tapped a steady rhythm on the roof of the cruiser, each drop like a heart beating in the dark. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror for that single glowing window, but all I saw were blurred taillights fading into the mist. She hadn't said another word since I dropped her off at her security detail's SUV, careful hands guiding her inside, voices hushed. I watched until her taillights disappeared, then peeled out, tires spinning, briefly on the wet asphalt. My phone buzzed. A text from dispatch. Unit 1, clear approximate 2:45 a.m. Resident states she'll contact management. No acknowledgement of the cameras or the panic alarm logs. I thumbed a reply. Copy. No further action. Then I sat, engine idling, and listened to my own breathing. After 20 minutes, I switched the cruiser off and stepped into the drizzle. The station was a half-mile down the road, modern glass and steel, always too bright. Inside, the night watch sergeant gave me a nod. All quiet after your call. You want to run the logs? He slid the printout across the counter. I skimmed. One panic alarm, one hang-up. Call canceled on user end at 2:10. No notes about crying. No note about any search upstairs. Just false alarm. I tore the sheet in half and dropped it in the bin. I climbed the stairs to the lounge and poured coffee. Black, burning hot. I stared at the steam curling up under the fluorescent lights, thinking about the chaise lounge, that single drop of water on the carpet, the dead security feeds. No one else would see it that way. To them, it was a routine call, wires crossed, some VIP playing games. But when the cameras go dark and you feel watched in a room of mirrors, that's not a glitch. That's someone choosing to hide. By the time I left, dawn was edging the skylight gray. I drove home, parked under the street lamp. My neighbor's yard was full of green again, roses in bloom, morning mist lingering over the grass. I stared at my own front door, wondering if I should call in sick. But the body still worked, and there were homeless calls to take tonight. I went in, hung the soaked jacket by the heater, and sat at the kitchen table. The photograph slipped from my pocket onto the Formica surface. I picked it up, a younger me in uniform, arm slung around some kid's shoulders on a carnival ride. No names on the back. I set it face down and tried to sleep, but my eyes stayed open. I heard the phone ring in my dreams, soft, insistent. I reached to answer, but my hand hit only empty air. I woke to my bedroom clock. 5:12 a.m. Gray light through the curtains. My phone lay on the floor, screen cracked, and unread messages from dispatch. Unit 1, please confirm status. I tapped. Clear. All good. Then I headed to the shower. Days later, I couldn't shake that house. Villa Montoya Drive. Models of it in the media, glamorous, sleek. But all I could picture was the mirrors, the blank feeds, and that drop of water. I checked my schedule. Third watch, Friday night. 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I drove my own route. Windy roads past the guard gates. The cottages where homeless shelters stood lit warmly. I slowed, thinking about what I'd seen, then realized I was looking for that light upstairs. It wasn't there. The villa was dark, empty windows staring back like eyes. I checked the log again, nothing new. But then a notation appeared. Caller callback attempt unsuccessful. Timestamp 3:04 a.m. 4 days after the call. No one logged that attempt. I asked dispatch. They said no such entry. I pulled the printout and circled it in pen. Secretary said printers must be jamming. I left it on their desk and walked out. Friday night came. I clocked in at 10. Took the first few calls. Noise complaint, alarm at an empty warehouse. Routine. My old partner, Detective Monroe, slid into the lounge around midnight. He'd heard about my Montoya call. "You okay?" he asked. I shrugged. Just got under my skin. He nodded, made coffee. I talked to the techs. They say those cameras at Montoya never had any downtime. They're wired independently. There's no way those feeds should have cut. I let that sink in. He took a sip. "There's more," he said. Dispatch logs went missing for 2 hours that night. They can only be accessed by command staff. I ran the numbers in my head. 2 hours missing, covering the window when the radio crackled dead, the crying, the hallway search, the mirror room. Command staff saw the same logs I did, or they saw something else. He patted my shoulder and stood. "Be careful. You're poking at things that get buried." Then he left, coffee cup in hand, boots echoing down the hall. I went back to the cruiser. New call came in. 911, hang up at an oceanfront condo in Malibu. Sunken pines on one side, waves pounding rocks on the other. A single lamp left on in the penthouse. In the log, panic alarm, misdial, cancel. Same. I drove out there, fog rolling in off the water. The guard at the barrier waved me through. The condo elevator chimed empty. The door to Unit 27 was slightly ajar. I stepped inside. Hardwood floors, open kitchen, modern art on the walls. I called out. No answer. In the living room, a sofa faced floor-to-ceiling windows with panoramic ocean view. On the coffee table, a phone off the hook. A glass half filled with scotch, droplets running down the side. I picked up the phone. Dead. Then, footsteps above. A soft shuffle, like slippers. I reached. For my radio, static. A woman's voice floated down. "It's okay." It's him again. I didn't recognize the voice at first. Then it hit me. Charlie Hayes. A comedian who'd had a public meltdown 2 years earlier. Not a call I expected to handle. I climbed the stairs, each step groaning under my weight. The hallway was lined with mirrors. Again, my reflection skewed in the beveled glass. The door to his suite was cracked. I knocked, badge in hand. "LAPD, you okay in there?" The voice answered, "I'm fine." But it sounded hollow. I eased the door open. The suite was in darkness except for that lone lamp by the window. He sat on the edge of his bed, head in his hands. By the window, rain lashed the panes. He looked up, startled. "I thought you'd be someone else," he whispered. The room smelled of old sweat and anxiety. I pressed the emergency button, but he never answers. He gestured to the glass. No footprints on the deck. Cameras dark. I stepped in. "Mr. Hayes, can you tell me what happened?" He swallowed, eyes glassy. I saw him behind me in the mirror, but when I turned, nothing. I heard him breathe. He paused. "He's funny. Used to open for me on tour. I thought he was gone." In the mirror above his dresser hung a framed comedy poster. Mine was nowhere. But the opening act's name was crossed out. Below that, a date, 2001. I asked, "You knew him?" He nodded. "He was my friend. Then he vanished." His voice cracked. I radioed dispatch for backup. No answer. The log showed only my initial call, no cancellation. I scanned the room, no forced entry, no tracks, just that lamp, the scotch, the phone off the hook. He stood and moved toward me. "Will you stay until morning?" I hesitated. Duty said no. Human said yes. I settled on the couch as he climbed back into bed. The thunder rolled overhead. We listened to the rain, the silence. In the mirror, I saw something move, a shadow crossing the floor behind him. I turned, but the hallway was empty. I looked back at him. He'd dropped the covers and was gone. I sprang up, gun drawn, and rushed to the bed. Blank sheets, no sign he'd been there. Panic rising, I grabbed my radio, static. Then a click. "Unit 1, location?" It was dispatch. I swallowed. "Unit 1, secure." "False alarm," I said. My voice echoed in the marble suite. I left before dawn. Behind me, the mirror reflected only my flashlight beam and empty bed. The storm passed. The log read, "False alarm due to user error." No further notes, no mention of Charlie Hayes. No mention of a disappearing comedian or broken comedy posters. I went home again, tucking that photograph face down in my coat. The line between protocol and truth blurred with every call. And I knew I'd keep chasing those shadows and mirrors, even when the log said there was nothing there. We wound up back on patrol routes before sunrise, the storm's wake still dampening the pavement. For days, I drove past silent alarms and downed fences, half expecting to catch a flicker in those gated driveways. Villa Montoya Drive, the Malibu penthouse, now the condo on Sunset. Every time I turned a corner, the weight on my chest tightened, as though the night itself were waiting for me to slip. I kept telling myself these were just false alarms, canceled calls, human errors. But when the feed cuts out in a room full of cameras and you feel breath on your neck without a soul in sight, errors become choices. I checked my schedule. Thursday, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., Sector 3. I grabbed a cup of coffee from the canteen, blacker than tar. Sergeant Ruiz eyed me as I walked by. "Late nights catching ghosts?" he asked, voice low. I shrugged. "Just standard beat." He didn't buy it. "Your eyes look like you've seen too many empty houses." I nodded and moved on. At 11:45 p.m., I got the call. 911 hang-up at a private rehab clinic off Mulholland Drive. No name in the log, just sensitive location. Dispatch flagged it low priority. No weapons, no overt distress. But I'd come this far. I took the cruiser and followed the canyon road, headlights carving through thick mist. The clinic's sign glowed faintly. Silver pines, confidential treatment. And below, the number blurred into darkness. A single spotlight shone on the gravel driveway. The gates were open. I pulled in. The driveway wound through tall pines, branches heavy with moisture. Fog curled at ground level, and my tires hissed on the stones. I killed the engine a quarter-mile in and walked the rest, flashlight in hand. The main entrance was locked, keypad dead. I tapped the glass, no answer. Doors alarmed, but inside I heard muffled sobs and someone breathing hard, like a patient in crisis. I radioed dispatch. Unit 3, at rehab clinic, no visible entry, multiple voices inside. They acknowledged, then cut off. I found a side door ajar under a stairwell. Inside, hallways split in 3 directions. Male wards, female wards, administration. Lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows. Sobbing came from the female wing. I took the right corridor, boots echoing. At the end, double doors marked patient lounge. One door was open. Inside, Sectional sofas faced a TV mounted on the wall. It was off. A tray of half-empty water glasses sat on a coffee table. No one in sight. I swept the room, beam cutting through dust motes. Then I heard it. A button clicking, like someone arming a panic switch. The overhead lights brightened starkly, revealing movement behind me. I whirled, nothing but empty chairs. The doors slid shut with a pneumatic hiss. I tried to open them. They wouldn't budge. My radio crackled uselessly. I drew my weapon and approached the doors, hand on the panel. A soft voice whispered through the glass. "They said you'd come." I froze. The voice was female, frail. I pressed my face to the glass. No one on the other side. Then footsteps, bare feet padding across linoleum. I spun, swept the flashlight down the corridor, empty, but I heard a soft sigh behind me. I faced the glass again. A shape flickered, tall, cloaked in shadows. I pulled back, heart pounding. The doors slid open. I stepped inside and called, "If you're in here, I need you to show yourself." My words echoed. On the right wall, photographs of patients lined the corridor. Before and after shots, wellness hopeful. One photo caught my eye, a young actor grinning into the camera. He'd disappeared from the public eye after a scandal. Rehab clinics were supposed to be safe havens, but the photo caption read, "Anonymous." In the before shot, he was slender, hopeful. The after shot, eyes glassy, hair cropped, he wore a hospital gown and looked terrified. I moved on, following the charted exits. I reached the nurse's station. Empty pill bottles lined the countertop, dosage logs filled in neat handwriting. But one entry was crossed out. Midnight, medication withheld per patient request. The patient ID matched the actor. Underneath, a note, "He hears voices." No initials. I checked my watch, 12:05 a.m. The note was fresh. My flashlight beam swung to a door marked Staff Lounge. Inside, the couches and tables were vacant, but on the bulletin board someone had tacked a printout of a newspaper article. "Celebrity X in rehab for anxiety." Yellowed edges scribbled over, "Not enough." Underneath, a hastily drawn arrow pointed to the file cabinet. I opened the drawers, empty folders except one labeled "Confidential, do not open." I hesitated, thumb on the tab, then pulled it open. Inside, patient files, treatment notes, therapy session logs, and in the center a pillowcase folded neatly. I unfolded it. A single silk glove, damp to the touch. No signs of blood, only the outline of fingers. I shone my light on the glove, tiny beads of water on the surface, just like the drop on the chaise lounge. I slipped the glove into an evidence bag as radios popped to life. Units 2 through 5, sweep perimeter. Suspect may still be inside. I clicked my radio. Unit 3, copy. Patient concerns accurate. Evidence of disturbance. No reply. I moved to exit, but the corridor behind me reshaped. Walls seemed to stretch. The exit sign flickered off, replaced by a door at the end of the hall I hadn't seen. My hair prickled. I walked slowly toward it, flashlight beam bouncing. As I drew near, I heard whispering. Two voices, familiar and distant, reciting therapy exercises. One was the actor's voice, thin and trembling. The other, a voice like mine, deep and calm, guiding him. I pressed my ear to the crack. They talked about breathing, grounding, releasing fear. I flung the door open. It led to a private office. Plush carpets, mahogany desk, leather chair. On the desk, a tape recorder clicked, mid-play. I hit stop. On the cassette compartment, it read, "Session number 45, confidential." I pressed eject. Tape slid out. On it, Patient X, scrawled in black marker. I pocketed it. The office was empty except for a wall-length mirror behind the desk. My reflection stared back, uniformed, flashlight in hand, eyes wide. But for a heartbeat, the reflection wasn't mine. It was the actor's trembling face. Then it snapped back to me. My radio crackled. "Unit 3, backup on the way." I exhaled, stepped out of the office, and found the corridor had vanished. Only one door remained, marked exit. I pushed through into a storage closet. Stacks of cleaning supplies, empty mop buckets. Wet footprints led out toward a door. I followed, sponging floor-like bleed pattern though no water on the floor. I opened the door. Outside, rain poured, mixing with dirt tracks on concrete. I radioed, found patient, coming out back. No response. I stood in the downpour, the tape and glove in my coat. The clinic sat silent. Lights off except for one small window on the second floor. Dim glow. I thought I heard singing, soft, unsteady. I called out, "Sir? Ma'am, are you there?" Only the wind answered. Then the singing stopped. I walked back to the driveway, boots sloshing. The gates were closed. I tapped my badge, they opened. I climbed into the cruiser and drove off. No additional logs were made. Dispatch stamped the call as PRN check, status resolved. To them it was another routine, but I knew the glove, the tape, the missing patient files spoke louder than any log. When I returned that night to the station, they handed me a printed report. No evidence of intrusion, medical call canceled by prescriber. I shredded it in the bin. The tape and glove went into evidence, but I could already hear the next call coming. The next mirror to look into, the next window to glow, and in each the same question. Who's pulling the strings when the cameras go dark and the logs lie silent? I walked out of the station into dawn's gray light, clutching the tape recorder. The wind carried a faint melody, someone humming from an empty lot. I stopped, listened, but heard only silence. Then a single raindrop pattered on my shoulder. I turned, but no one was there. We never quite know when the next call will come. For me, it arrived on a Wednesday, just as I was finishing my paperwork in the briefing room. Stacks of incident reports, logs waiting to be signed, the regular hum of fluorescent lights overhead. I heard the dispatcher's voice over the console. "All units, 911, hang up at a private recording studio off Sunset Boulevard. Caller line disconnected at 3:02 a.m., Sector 5, Unit 1 advised." I leaned forward and tapped the mic. Unit 1 responding. It felt like déjà vu. A recording studio, dark, empty stages, endless microphones waiting for voices that had gone silent. I grabbed my coat and radio, and within minutes I was rolling down the 101, the city lights blurred by rain-slicked windshield. The studio sat between a shuttered nightclub and an all-night diner, its neon sign flickering closed in fractured red. I parked under the awning, the rain tracing rivulets down the glass, and stepped inside. The lobby was dark, except for the glow of the console screen. A digital log showing a single entry. Panic alarm triggered, caller disconnect. No name, no indication who'd pressed it. I checked the reception desk, phone off the hook, handset hanging limp, cord coiled loosely. I clicked my flashlight on and swept the lobby. Magazines on a rack, coffee cups dried with old rings of stale liquid. The smell of dust and damp carpet filled the air. I called out, "LAPD! Anyone here?" The echo ricocheted through the corridors behind me. No answer. The alarm panel next to the door showed all zones armed except one, the control room. I tapped the screen. Zone 4, disarmed. Control room was usually locked. Someone had let themselves in. I proceeded down the hallway. On the right, the door labeled Master Control. I tried the handle. It turned. Inside were racks of equipment, mixing boards, recording decks, monitor screens. One monitor flickered briefly before going dark, then lit again, showing a live feed of the main studio booth. Nothing there but a lone mic suspended from the ceiling. The timestamp read 3:05 a.m. I jabbed record on the deck. Red light glowed, but nothing happened. The tape deck had no tape. I turned to leave and spotted a rack of open drawers. In one were stacks of tapes, each labeled with dates and artist initials. I pulled a tape marked JH Intensive Session, October 12, 2003, and loaded it into the deck. The spools spun and hissed to life. On the console, a login prompt blinked. I tapped Admin. Screen flashed, access denied. Then, through the headphones, a voice whispered, "Play it all." The voice wasn't over the speakers, but in my head. I yanked off the headset. The whisper stopped. My radio crackled. "Unit 1, please confirm status." I squared my shoulders. "Dispatch, I have a live feed of the booth, but studio is empty. No signs of forced entry." Silence. I waited. Nothing. I moved toward the studio door. It was ajar. As I pushed, the rain outside intensified, wind rattling the windows. In the studio, the only light came from a small red on-air bulb. The booth was pristine. A stool, mic stand, and empty lyrics binder on a music stand. The glass window separating control room from booth was smeared with a single fingerprint. I tapped the glass. No one answered. I opened the door and stepped inside. My flashlight beam danced across gold acoustic foam. A single sheet of paper lay on the floor. Typed lyrics, scratched out lines. A date in the margin. September 29th, 2004. The words spoke of regret, lost friendship, betrayal. I recognized the handwriting, highly stylized, the same hand that signed millions of autograph cards. I snapped a photo with my phone. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me. The on-air bulb dimmed and blinked. The rain's patter seemed to grow louder, thundering in my ears. I tried the door. It wouldn't budge. My radio was dead. I drew my weapon, heart pounding, and circled the room. The lyrics sheet floated up as though caught on a breeze, then settled again. I picked it up, reading a line. "Your voice still haunts these empty rooms." My skin crawled. I pressed my ear to the glass. Silence on the other side. Then a soft thump above. I looked up. The ventilation grate shifted, a dark shape moving behind it. I trained my light on the grate. Nothing visible, only shadows. I keyed the mic on my weapons integrated radio. Static, then a faint click. "Unit 1, you copy?" A voice came through, muffled. "Stay calm. We're en route." Relief hit me, but dread followed. The door latch clicked. It opened slowly. 2 officers rushed in, flashlights and tasers drawn. "Is anyone here?" one called. I stepped out, handing over the lyrics sheet. "Found this in the booth." He scanned it, frowned. "That's unreleased. Artist shelved it after everything." He gestured to the booth. "You okay, Sarge?" I nodded, still watching the ventilation grate. My partner, who'd arrived with the backup, stepped in. "You heard it, right? Whispered from the board?" I swallowed. I thought, yes. He brushed aside my concern. Same story at Montoya, rehab, penthouse, all these VIP spots. Logs say false alarm or misdial, but the panic alarms all disarmed themselves, and security feeds glitched. He looked me in the eye. Someone's messing with the logs. We cleared the scene. No sign of foul play, no intruder. Dispatch marked it unfounded, closed. The lyrics tape, the fingerprint, the whisper. It all went into a property bag labeled evidence, then toward a storage locker. As I left, the on-air bulb blinked one last time, then went dark. I felt the booth watching me, bereft of its artist but still alive with echoes. Back at the station, the sergeant asked for my report. I typed it out. 911 hang up at private recording studio, no forced entry, panic alarm disarmed remotely. Live feed, capture unsuccessful. Evidence collected, fingerprint, lyrics sheet. I signed off. He glanced at me, brow furrowed. You sure, nothing more? I forced a smile. Just another false alarm. That night, I fell asleep to the hum of distant traffic and the memory of that whisper, play it all. And I knew I would, because those rooms still had stories to tell, whether anyone was listening or not. We got a 911 call. The address was unfamiliar this time, the Marina docks at Marina del Rey, Slip C-17. I'd responded to calls on docked yachts before, but those were run-of-the-mill intoxications or engine fires. This call was logged simply as disturbance, possible panic alarm. Caller disconnected at 1:58 a.m. No name, no vessel registration. Dispatch patched me through. Unit 1, proceed to Marina del Rey, Slip C-17. Caller hang up, no further details. I gripped the wheel and guided my cruiser through empty streets, neon reflections rippling on wet asphalt. The harbor lights glowed dimly in the mist, white buoys bobbing like ghosts in the bay. I arrived under a pale street lamp. The yacht sat low in the water, sleek lines, polished teak deck, canvas covers drawn over the railings. No crew in sight. I clicked off my cruiser's overhead lights and stepped into the mist. The air smelled of diesel and salt. My boots made a soft splash as I crossed the gangway, flashlight in one hand, radio in the other. The boarding ladder had been lowered. Someone expected me. I climbed aboard, stepping onto deck planks slick with mist. I called out, LAPD, anyone on board? My voice cracked in the cold air. Only my echo answered. The yacht's name was stenciled in chrome letters on the stern. Whisper's Edge. I'd heard that name whispered in certain circles, rumored to be owned by a tech billionaire who'd quietly funded a string of indie film projects. No cruise ship parties here. This was a private affair. The deck was empty except for a single winch dripping water onto the deck. A trail of droplets led to a hatch just forward of the cockpit. I shone my light. No footprints, no debris, just that thin ribbon of water. I raised my radio. Unit 1 on board. No sign of passengers or crew. Hatch appears unlocked. I gripped the railing and tilted the hatch up. It creaked on rusted hinges. Below deck, narrow hallways branched left and right. The interior was dimly lit by emergency strips along the floor. The polished oak walls reflected the red glow in strange patterns. I heard a faint hum, air conditioning, or a generator far forward. I moved toward the source, passing closed doors labeled guest quarters, galley, and captain's stateroom. At each door, I knocked once and announced. No answer. At the end of the corridor, the hallway opened into a small lounge, floor-to-ceiling windows facing the marina. A single lamp burned on a side table beside a curved sofa. On the coffee table lay a tablet device, screen cracked, water spattered. I wiped the glass with my sleeve. The lock screen read, Emergency mode engaged, live transmission active. I tapped. The screen, it unlocked, revealing an app labeled Silent Alert. It showed my location, time-stamped 1 minute ago. A line read, Recording 000217. I hit stop. The app played back nothing but static, then, very faintly, a voice trembling, overlapping syllables I couldn't make out. I clicked pause and leaned closer, but my radio crackled with static. I keyed the mic. Dispatch, I have an active recording device here. Sound feed is garbled. Nothing. Behind me, A door to the galley stood ajar. I stepped in, gleaming steel counters, unused dishes stacked on shelves, the stovetop cold. On the counter was a single mug, half filled with coffee that had long since gone cold. Foam rings marked the level. The mug bore a company logo I recognized, the film studio where a well-known actor had once signed on to a passion project that never got made. I recalled the actor's name but kept it silent. No official record on this call. I turned back toward the lounge. On the sofa cushion I spotted an imprint, like someone had sat there recently, shifting weight. I pressed my flashlight against the cushion. A small strand of hair clung to the fabric, long, dyed platinum, stiff with salt water. A single hair. My stomach tightened. I slipped on a latex glove, plucked the hair, and sealed it in an evidence bag. My radio crackled. Unit 1, backup ETA 2 minutes. Good, they'd heard me. I pocketed the tablet and the evidence bag, then headed aft toward the master stateroom. The corridor walls were narrowing, the lights flickering. As I approached the door, a soft click sounded, like someone turned a deadbolt. I reached for the handle. It was locked. I tapped my baton against the doorframe. No response. I knocked. "Ma'am." "Sir, LAPD. If you need assistance, open up." Silence. I pressed my ear to the door and heard muffled breathing, shallow, panicked. A voice whispered, barely audible, "Please, help me." It sounded familiar, like a public figure I'd escorted off a flight after a medical scare. But I couldn't place the name for sure. I radioed dispatch again. "Unit 1, I have a possible occupant inside master stateroom. They seem distressed." My radio died, static, then silence. I whirled, drawing my weapon. The corridor behind me was empty, but the emergency lights flickered red, drawing deep shadows. I forced the door with a kick. Panel cracked, latch gave way. Behind the door, a plush stateroom, king-size berth centered beneath a porthole, curtains drawn. Soft carpeting muffled my footsteps. The dresser drawers were open, clothes spilled out, hangers on the floor. A smartphone screen glowed on the nightstand, incoming call. "Unknown number." I silenced it. On the bed, a bathrobe thrown carelessly, the same shade as the one Miss Caldwell wore. I stepped closer. A figure huddled by the porthole, face buried in their arms, shoulders shaking. I stooped and tapped their shoulder. "Ma'am, are you okay?" They looked up, eyes wide, wild with fear. Pale skin, mascara streaked. I recognized her then, the A-list actress who'd vanished from public life after a family tragedy. She stared at me, wordless. I offered my hand. She took it, trembling. Behind me, the stateroom door slammed shut on its own. I spun, but the corridor was gone. Only the porthole remained, showing the black water outside. I eased her back to the bed and knelt beside her. "We need to get you off the boat," I said softly. She nodded, eyes unfocused. I radioed, "Unit 1, suspect secured, victim disoriented but alive, requesting transport to dock." No response. I gathered her in my arms and started for the door, but the bathrobe's belt was tied around her wrist, securing her to the bedpost. I tugged at it, not tight. She mumbled, "He said I'd never leave." I knelt, untied the belt. The moment it released, she bolted upright and grabbed the railing. Her gaze locked on the mirror mounted above the dresser. I followed her eyes. In the mirror's reflection, a man stood behind me. Tall, coat dripping wet, face obscured beneath a hood. My flashlight beam pierced the glass, but no shape appeared when I turned. My breath caught. I spun back to the bed. She dropped to the floor, sobbing. "He's here," she whispered. "He always is." Her eyes darted to the dresser drawers. One drawer was open, but every other drawer remained shut tight. I approached and looked inside. Photographs clipped from magazines, dozens of faces. The security guard from Montoya, the comedian at Malibu, the tech genius, the actor in rehab, and here, her own face, smiling on a movie poster torn from its backing. Each photo had a date scrawled in red ink, dates of their panic calls. The last scrawl read today's date. A sharp crack echoed through the cabin, like someone pounding on hull plating. My hand went to my holster. The mirror's surface then rippled, just for a heartbeat like water. I leaned forward, eyes narrowing. The reflection wasn't mine, but his. That hooded figure, leaning over the actress's shoulder, whispering words I couldn't hear. Then the glass stilled. I recoiled. My radio burst to life. Unit 1, this is dispatch. All units cancel response. No emergencies reported. Cutter patrol in your area. Then dead silence. I stood, heart thundering. She backed against the wall, trembling. I whispered, "I'm getting you out of here." I led her to the hatch ladder. As we climbed, I glanced over my shoulder. The mirror stood empty, the drawer closed, the yacht silent except for the lapping water below. On the deck above, the lights blinked off one by one, leaving us in darkness. We burst through the hatch to the main deck. I guided her down the ladder to a waiting harbor launch. She climbed aboard, shivering, wrapped in a blanket. I followed. As we pulled away, I looked back at Whisper's edge. The yacht's aft windows glowed faintly, one after another, all dark except a lone porthole where emergency lights cast red shadows inside. For a moment, I thought I saw her standing in that porthole watching us leave. Then the porthole went dark. I climbed into the launch's cabin, the diesel engine idling. Dispatch crackled again. Unit 1, status? I pressed the mic. Subject removed. No sign of intruder. Vessel secure. They replied, copy, 10-4. And they were silent. Later, at the station, the harbor officers handed me a printed log file. 1 panic alarm triggered, 1 hang-up, resolution, user error. I shredded it. The hair, the tablet, the mug, the belt, the photos, all sealed in evidence. Logged under unknown disturbance. No names attached. But as I walked out into dawn's gray, I felt the hum of engines and the hush of water stalking me. A reminder that someone was watching. Someone always there. And in every mirror and porthole, in every locker and camera feed, the same question lingered. When the alarms fall silent and the logs lie, who remains to listen? We got a 911 call. The unit identifier was my own number, Unit 1. It was 3:13 a.m. on a Sunday, 2 nights after the marina call. I stared at the dispatcher's tone in my earpiece, flat, procedural, until I realized they weren't reading a log entry. They were reading my home address. Unit 1, the voice said, we have an in-progress panic alarm, residents. Proceed immediately. My chest tightened. They never dispatched to personal addresses. I glanced at the dashboard clock. It glowed 3:14 a.m. Rain pattered against the windshield. I killed the engine, grabbed my coat, and stepped into the downpour. The drive home was surreal. Empty streets, neon halos around streetlights, water pooling in gutters. I rehearsed responses in my mind. False alarm, accidental trigger, anything to keep the call from following me inside. But by the time I reached my driveway, the gate had clicked open on its own. My house sat dark, windows black except for a single light under the back eave. The panic alarm's siren droned through the night air, muffled by the rain. I paused under the carport, raindrops sliding down my face. Every muscle tensed as I approached the front door. I drew my weapon. Habit, not hope. The porch light flickered. I tapped my badge on the keypad. It beeped green. The front door swung inward at my touch, revealing the foyer I knew so well. Worn hardwood floors, the little table by the stairs with my partner's old baseball glove, the framed photo of the carnival, me and that kid. No one was there. The siren cut out. My flashlight beam danced across the walls. I stepped inside, calling out, "LAPD, anyone here?" My voice cracked. Echoes answered. I caught the scent of coffee, stale grounds, half-empty mug on the kitchen counter. Pour over, set up, but long cold. I took the mug. The coffee inside was ice cold, but still in the filter. I choked on the realization. Someone had made coffee for me. Someone had been here. I moved toward the stairs. On the bottom step lay my coat, dripping, empty. My radio lay at the top of the stairs, battery dead. I climbed, weapon raised. Each step groaned underfoot. At the landing, I passed the hallway mirror, cracked spider web lines through my reflection. I froze. In the mirror, I saw not just myself, but another shape behind me. Tall, hooded, silent. I spun around. The hall was empty. My pulse thundered in my ears. I took a breath, then opened my bedroom door. Inside, the bed was made neatly, pillows fluffed, but the sheets pulled tight as if no one had lain there in days. On the bedside table lay that battered tape recorder, the one I'd confiscated from the rehab clinic session. It sat open, tape dangling, still clicking. I pressed play. Static at first, then a rush of my own voice, clipped and tired. Patient X, breathing techniques. Release the fear. It cut out into hushed whispers I couldn't make out. I dropped the recorder. My gaze fell on the dresser. Photos lined up. The actor from the rehab clinic, the musician from the studio, the comedian from Malibu, the billionaire from the yacht, Miss Caldwell, and here in the center, me in uniform, smiling. Each photo marked with a date, dates of the calls. Beneath each name, a red circle. Under mine, today's date. I slid a hand into my pocket and pulled out a single platinum hair, the strand I'd bagged on the yacht. It caught the ceiling light, almost luminescent. I dropped it, and it floated to the floor, landing on top of my partner's baseball glove. I saw the curve of that glove, the way his fingers bent long ago. Then I remembered. He'd died on duty. I hadn't taken off his glove. I never had the heart to return it. He couldn't press a panic alarm. He was gone. The whisper came again, soft as breath in my ear. "You should have stayed off this street." I whipped around. No one. Only the curtain fluttering by the window. Outside, the rain had stopped. Silence pressed against the glass. I sank onto the edge of the bed, my sidearm in my lap. The recorder clicked itself off. I slid the glove and the strand into the tape recorder's compartment and closed it, lock clicking. In the mirror, I saw only myself, eyes red-rimmed, uniform still damp. I raised a hand to touch the glass. My reflection did not move. It held a finger to its lips. I whispered, "Not tonight." The room stayed still. My phone vibrated on the nightstand. A text from dispatch. "Unit 1, cancel alarm. No emergencies in your area." They gave no explanation. I set the phone face down. I lay back on the pillow staring at the cracked mirror. The cracks spidered like veins, tracing over my reflection. The night stretched on. I felt the weight of every call I'd answered pressing down on me. Each alarm, code 4, false alarm, hang-up, had been so full of something unspoken. Real fear, real voices, real people trapped in rooms that cameras went dark on. I closed my eyes, waiting for sleep. But before I drifted, I heard a final click. The front door locked itself behind me. And then, silence. We got the call one last time. my own badge number echoing through the speaker. Unit 1, 911, panic alarm, residence. Dawn was breaking. Pale gray light creeping through my bedroom window, illuminating the cracked mirror. My heart slammed. I'd thought it over, rehearsed every exit, every protocol. But this was the final invitation. I rose from the bed, leaving the tape recorder and glove where they'd fallen. The coffee mug waited on the kitchen counter, empty now, its filter still perched above. I grabbed my coat from the hall table, heavy, rain-soaked still, and stepped outside. The front door clicked shut behind me, locking itself. I paused on the porch as the world held its breath. The air was cold, dew clinging to the grass. No rain fell now, but the sky threatened. My cruiser was parked exactly where I'd left it. Lights off, engine cold. I slid behind the wheel and keyed the ignition. Nothing. The battery was dead. I tried the radio, static. Every tool I relied on had been turned against me. I glanced at the driveway gate. It was swinging open. Whoever, or whatever, had called me here wanted me inside. I stepped out of the car and walked toward the gate. Each step felt weighted, as if the night itself pressed down. The street beyond was empty. No patrol cars, no passers-by, no help. Just the familiar houses with their dark windows. My own house, the safe harbor, vanished behind me, swallowed by the morning mist. At the end of the block stood a solitary streetlight. Beneath it lay a single sheet of paper pinned by a paperclip to a traffic cone. Section 7. My name was scrawled at the top. I picked it up and unfolded it. The paper was blank except for a line in red ink at the bottom. One final confession. My pulse raced. I shoved the paper into my coat and turned toward the light's halo. There, standing in the mist, was the hooded figure from the porthole mirror. Tall, still, silent. No face visible. He held my baseball glove in one hand, my tape recorder in the other. I stopped, thinking, this can't be real. But I recognized the stance, the tilt of his shoulders. I swallowed hard and called out, "Show yourself!" My voice sounded small. The figure remained motionless. I took a step forward. He held out the glove and recorder. I closed the distance. The recorder clicked on, playing back the last tape I'd put inside. My own voice, trembling, reciting every log entry I'd written about Montoya, Malibu, rehab, studio, yacht, home. My words filled the night, each moment replaying like evidence against me. The figure lowered his head, and I saw, under the hood, my own face, older, wearier, eyes shadowed with fatigue. He was me, the culmination of every panic alarm I'd answered, every false log I'd signed off. I reached for the glove and recorder. He held them out, patient, accusing. I realized then this was the confession I'd never spoken, the confession that I'd failed to protect those voices in the silence. I whispered, voice cracking, "I'm sorry." The figure nodded once, almost imperceptibly, and the recorder clicked off. The glove dropped to the pavement. He stepped back into the mist. I watched until his shape dissolved into the gray. Alone, I picked up the glove and recorder and tucked them inside my coat. I looked up at the streetlight. It flickered and died, plunging me into pre-dawn darkness. Nothing remained but my own breath and the sound of my boots on wet asphalt. I turned toward home, each step echoing that final line, unwritten but understood. I answered every call. I listened to every alarm, but in the end, the only voice I couldn't save was my own. We got a 911 call. The address was familiar, one I'd driven past a dozen times on graveyard shift. A sleek, white stucco villa perched on the cliff above Laguna Beach. its modernist lines swallowed by the fog rolling inland from the Pacific. Dispatch was calm at first. Routine hang-up, caller disconnected. But I'd learned to treat every hang-up like a live wire. I eased my cruiser through the gates, the electric barrier sliding up with a muted whine. No guard greeted me. I knew from past calls the security team usually watched every dashcam feed. Tonight, the cameras were dark. The driveway curled past manicured hedges and lighting fixtures buried in pebbles. My headlights carved through the mist, illuminating a lone golf cart parked near a koi pond that shimmered without movement. A trickle of water echoed in the fog, oddly loud in the stillness. I stepped out, boots crunching on gravel, and reached for my radio. Unit 42 en route, checking for panic button activation. Silence answered. The dispatcher must have moved on to more urgent calls. I climbed to the front steps where a single porch light blinked on and off, like someone pacing inside had set it to blink in Morse code. I knocked. No response. I tried the handle, locked. Yet through the sidelights I caught movement in the foyer. A silhouette drifting behind floor-to-ceiling windows, hesitant and quick. I knocked again, more firmly. "Laguna County Sheriff." My voice sounded hollow. The figure stopped. The light inside steadied, then died. The entire house went dark. My pulse quickened. I should have called it in, but the silence pressed against me, making my words feel too loud. I stepped back and circled the house, keeping my hand on the holster of my flashlight. At the west wing, I found sliding glass doors slightly ajar. I pushed through. The living room was immaculate. Persian rugs, chrome sculptures, a single grand piano at the center. The keys were dusted with footprints, tiny prints that looked feminine. My flashlight beam swept upward to reveal a dressing table by the window, its mirror cracked in a spiderweb pattern. Scrawled on the dusty glass, faint but legible, "I know you." My stomach dropped. I wiped at the message. No other marks, no blood, no hair, just the phrase hovering like a ghost. I retraced my steps toward the foyer, floorboards sighing under my weight. The front door slammed shut behind me as if pushed by an unseen hand. I spun, back to where I'd entered. The glass doors were closed now, latches in place. I tugged at the handle. It didn't budge. My radio crackled. "Unit 42, you there?" Finally. "Yeah, I'm inside." No sign of forced entry, no response at door, saw footprints on piano. I paused. Also, a message on the mirror. Static. The dispatcher's voice again. "Copy that. Backup en route. Hold position." I exhaled, but the breath came too heavy. I moved upstairs, every step deliberate, aware of how easily wood can creak. At the top, the hallway stretched into darkness. I clicked on my flashlight's high beam. Doors lined both sides. One at the far end was ajar, pale light spilling out. I approached. The air was cold, unnatural in a house with climate control. A faint hum pulsed from inside the room. I edged inside. A massive four-poster bed faced the wall. The sheets wrinkled like someone had jumped down moments ago. On the pillow lay 2 cell phones, one black, one white, screens cracked and dead. Next to them, a Polaroid photo. A woman in designer clothes, her face turned away, standing on the same balcony I'd just passed. Behind her, I could make out the silhouette of a man, broad shoulders, perfectly tailored suit, but the instant flash had blurred his features. I shook the photo, thinking maybe it was someone I recognized. It wasn't. Yet the feeling that I knew who he was settled deep in my chest. I pocketed the Polaroid and stepped back into the hall. The bedroom door slammed. I yanked at the handle, locked. My radio buzzed again. "Unit 42, backup ETA 2 minutes." I tapped the door. "Someone in there? Police." I thought I heard laughter, soft, amused, echoing off the walls. I pressed my ear to the crack. Nothing. Then a whisper. "Come find me." The voice was familiar, but I couldn't place it. Cold sweat beaded at my hairline. I pulled out my cell phone to call dispatch directly, but there was no signal, nothing. I returned downstairs, tracking my steps by memory. The front door was ajar now, hanging crooked. I could have sworn I'd locked it behind me. I pushed it closed and turned to the piano room, where the footsteps led out a side corridor to a glass wall overlooking the cliff. Rain had begun, spattering the windows in rivulets that ran down in ghostly trails. Through the wet glass, I saw footprints leading off the terrace into the mist. Adult shoe prints, slightly larger than mine, pressed into the wet stone. I swallowed. The fog swallowed them just as quickly. The prints faded. I stepped onto the terrace. The wind off the ocean was sharp, salt and fear. I shone the flashlight into the fog. The beam caught something at the edge of the cliff, half hidden. A phone handset, identical to the ones upstairs, lying on its cord, tangled. I picked it up. The cord led back inside, snaking through the sliding door's gap. I walked back in, trailing the cord behind me. Inside, the phone stretched across the rug, through the foyer, and stopped at the front door. The receiver lay at the threshold. I knelt and lifted it. The dial tone hummed. I put it to my ear, silence, then static, then a soft click. A voice. "You're here." The voice was calm, too calm. I froze. It was the same voice that whispered behind the closed door upstairs. A moment later, the door behind me creaked. I spun, flashlight sweeping. No one there. The sliver of hallway was empty. The porch light flickered, then died, plunging me into darkness. The phone fell from my hand, cord snapping. I heard my own breathing, loud in the quiet. My radio crackled. "Unit 42, we're green on approach," and went silent again. I realized I was alone in a house that was never truly empty. The fog pressed against the windows, and somewhere, above the crash of waves, a door squeaked. I followed the sound down the hall to the basement stairs I hadn't noticed before. My flashlight skated over metal at the bottom. A panic button mounted on concrete. The button was pressed, and the panel beside it was open, wires dangling. I pressed my flashlight into the darkness below. The stairs smelled of damp earth, like a crawl space. I heard the hum of running water. No pipes anywhere near here. Then my radio buzzed to life. 42? I bolted up the stairs. The panic button light winked off. I hit the button reflexively. Nothing. I made it back to the front door, yanked it open, and fled outside just as the first patrol unit arrived. I raced down the driveway without looking back and didn't stop until the villa was a gray shape swallowed by fog. Backup found no one inside. No prints on the terrace, no phones, no panic button damage. Cameras had no recording. The Polaroid in my pocket turned blank when I pulled it out. They called it an abandoned security system, a prank, a tired officer's imagination. But I know what I heard, what he whispered, and I know that panic button was never his, because when I tell this late at night, I still hear the fog die away with the echo of his voice. "You're here." We got out of the cruiser, heart still pounding, and I watched the villa vanish into the fog as backup arrived. I let them take the lead. 2 patrol cars, a sergeant, even a crime scene tech with a flashlight tower strapped to his shoulder. I stayed back, arms crossed, breathing hard, waiting for them to call me back in. When the sergeant signaled, I followed him up the drive. Inside, the house felt colder. My breath fogged in the air. The tech swept his light across the foyer, then pointed at the smashed panel by the basement stairs. "Nothing left but the bracket," he said. "No wires, no button." I nodded and moved on, toward the master suite where I'd seen the Polaroid, now vanished. The entire upstairs was silent. Doors that I knew had been ajar when I fled were now shut, locked even. We tried every knob, no give. Downstairs, one of the patrol officers knelt by the koi pond. He held up a small dark shape. Found this by the drain. I recognized it immediately, a single film negative, curled and wet. I took it, careful not to smudge the emulsion. The tech slipped on gloves and labeled it evidence. I kept my eyes on the basement door, ajar again, swaying slightly. I should have known better than to go down there, but I did. I've never been one to back down. The steps were narrower than I remembered the smell dank. My flashlight caught water dripping from a low pipe I hadn't noticed before. That hum of running water was louder now. I edged past a stack of cartons stamped with the villa's monogram and reached the far wall, where the panic button panel had been. It was intact, wires coiled neatly behind it, untouched. I knelt, tracing a finger along the wire channels. They led to a larger conduit, then vanished into the concrete floor. I glanced up at the team behind me. The sergeant whispered, "You sure you want to be here?" I nodded, voice tight. He signaled the tech and 2 patrolmen to stay at the top of the stairs. I crawled forward, flashlight beam cutting a thin arc. At the far corner, an old storm drain grate was sunk into the wall, rusted bars set into mortar. The barrier between the villa and the cliff face half buried. I lifted the grate. Behind it, a crawl space with slick stones and the echo of water. I could feel air moving past me, cold, salty gusts that didn't belong underground. I radioed up, possible crawl space, ventilation to the cliff. No answer. The beat was dead. I slipped through the opening, my chest pressed against the low ceiling. I inched forward, dislodging pebbles. The farther I went, the louder the ocean became, until the walls felt like they'd disappear and I'd step onto the bluff. Then I heard it. Footsteps above me, soft shuffles, deliberate. The crawl space wasn't empty. My flashlight shook as I turned to look back, the grate still open, black as pitch. I froze. The footsteps paused. Then a voice, low and distant, came through the wall. "Going somewhere?" My breath hitched. It was the same voice, the one that whispered, "You're here." I retreated toward the grate, but the space behind had collapsed. Stones and mortar jammed the opening. I pressed my shoulder against the wall, trying to shift them. Above, the footfalls moved away, the rumble of gravel sliding. Then silence. I backed up until my hand struck something cold and metallic. An old maintenance hatch sealed to the stone. I pried it open. Behind it, the ruins of an abandoned storm shelter, its tunnel ending at a ladder up to the pool deck. I climbed, pulling myself through the narrow gap, emerging beneath the moonlit water that cascaded over the infinity edge of the pool. The slab under my feet was slick. I climbed the ladder, water dripping off me, and stepped onto the deck. Up here, the fog had lifted enough to reveal the cliff's edge, jagged rocks surging into black water. Beneath my feet, the concrete vibrated with the crash of waves. I shone my light back toward the house. On the balcony above the living room, I saw her silhouette again. A woman in a flowing dress, face turned away, staring out at the sea. I called up, "Ma'am?" No reply. I climbed the stairs to the balcony. Footsteps thundered on the deck behind me. I spun, empty. The woman was gone. I swept the beam across the glass doors. One pane was cracked, a jagged line splitting it. I pressed my palm to the cool glass. Inside, the house was black, every light blown. I knocked. Then, above the roar of surf, came her voice. "Thank you for coming." It was the actor's voice, the celebrity known for turning vulnerability into charity work. I pressed my ear to the glass. My reflection shimmered next to hers, hollow-eyed, drawn. The mist parted, revealing a phone clenched in her hand, dangling by its cord. I stepped back, tripped on the railing, and caught myself against the balustrade. My flashlight slid across a Polaroid taped to the wall. The actress with her back to the camera, the villa behind her, and me standing on the deck, flashlight in hand. I looked down at the strip in my palm, same photo, fresh and damp. My radio buzzed for the first time in 10 minutes. "Unit 42, what's your status?" I stammered. I'm outside on the pool deck." "Backup is here. We need a 10 to 15, I swallowed. "Copy." I dropped the Polaroid and stepped back from the railing. The fog swallowed it immediately. I turned to leave, but the balcony doors swung open quietly behind me. The interior light flickered weakly, revealing the curved corridor I'd never noticed. I heard footsteps approaching from inside, slow, measured, and the faint scrape of metal on stone. I reached for my radio, but the battery was dead. I drew my flashlight and followed the corridor into darkness. Every step echoed. The walls tilted inward, narrowing. At the end, a heavy door marked "Closet" in small metal letters. My mind fought the absurdity. A closet shaft hidden behind a luxury suite. I pressed my ear. Silence. I gripped the handle, cold steel, and opened it. Inside was an empty space, no bigger than a coffin. The air smelled of rot and seaweed. In the center lay a cell phone, one black, one white. Screens shattered. I reached for them. A blip on my chest mic jolted me. A blood-red panic light I didn't install. It pulsed once, then vanished. I dropped the phones and stepped back. Behind me, the corridor had shifted. Doors realigned. A dead end where the pool deck exit should have been. I turned in panic. The closet door shut, plunging me into pitch black. I stood still, heartbeat thudding as if the house itself was watching. We got trapped. The metal walls closed around me, narrowing like the throat of a vice. My flashlight beam danced across warped steel, revealing rivets and seams in the paneling. Industrial, out of place in a luxury home. The panic light on my chest mic pulsed again before dying, plunging me deeper into darkness. I swore under my breath, pressed my back against the door, and shoved with all my weight. The panel trembled but held fast. My breath sounded too loud, ragged in the claustrophobic space. I forced myself to calm down, counting each exhale. I remembered the protocol. Stay calm, assess exit routes. The only exit was back through that crawlspace hatch, now jammed by collapsed concrete. I slid my hand along the wall and found the maintenance hatch I'd pried open before. The latch had reset itself. I twisted and yanked until it gave way, metal scraping metal. Fresh air rushed in, cool and salty, carrying the distant roar of surf. Relief washed over me. I ducked through, heels scraping the stone floor, and tumbled into the tunnel. The narrow passage smelled of mildew and seaweed. I turned on my flashlight's low beam and edged forward, each footfall echoing off the curved walls. The hum of water grew louder, a steady drip, drip, drip from overhead pipes. I followed the sound to a fork in the tunnel, where two passageways diverged, one sloping upward toward a faint light, the other descending into blackness. Instinct told me to go up, toward safety and backup. But the voice from the closet whispered again through the walls, "Don't go back." My pulse spiked. I hesitated, the beam shaking as I weighed my options. I'd come this far. Turning back felt like walking into a trap. I forced my legs to move toward the descending tunnel. The darkness swallowed me, my flashlight the only beacon. The floor slanted downward until I reached a chamber carved into the rock, a hidden sub-basement beneath the villa. Old newspaper clippings plastered the damp walls, faded headlines about landslides, coastal erosion, and a local family's disappearance decades ago. The papers curled and cracked at the edges. I ran a fingertip over a date, May 1965. Underneath, someone had scrawled, "They never left." A chill crept down my spine. I stepped forward. The beam caught the edge of something metallic, a shipping crate stamped with the villa's monogram. The crate was chained and padlocked. I knelt, pried at the lock with my thumb, and it snapped open. The lid creaked as I lifted it. Inside lay dozens of Polaroid photos stacked haphazardly. The same actress in different rooms of the house, always turned away, the actor in various closets, backs hunched, staring into the lens. The villa's security guards, asleep at their posts. Even me, stepping through the crawlspace hatch. Each photo carried that damp, fresh smell, as if developed only moments ago. My heart pounded. How could someone have these? Who had time to take them and hide them here? I rifled through the pile, breath catching when I found one of me kneeling at the basement grate. Behind me, in the shadows, a figure watched, only the pale outline of a face. I dropped the photo. The flashlight beam swung wildly, illuminating the chamber. In each corner, the shadows seemed to deepen, pooling around me like living things. A soft click echoed. Somewhere behind me, the crate lid slammed shut. I spun, shoulders striking the crate. The chain rattled, but the padlock had mysteriously clipped itself back into place. I yanked at it. No give. The clinking sound of metal on metal sounded from deeper in the chamber. I backed away until the wall pressed against my back. My flashlight swept the darkness, catching a pair of eyes glinting at the edge of the beam. Too high for a person crouching, too reflective for rock. I dropped to one knee and aimed my weapon's laser sight. 2 red dots hovered in the black. Something growled low, an animal's rumble, but no animal lived here. I shouted, voice cracking, "Show yourself!" LAPD, Sheriff's Department. The silence swallowed my words. Then the tunnel mouth behind me emitted a soft pop, like a seal breaking. I turned, jaw clenched. The tunnel was clear, the passage upward lit now by emergency exit signs. I didn't hesitate. I sprinted back through the crawlspace, up the ladder to the pool deck. Rain pelted me as I emerged, the salt wind stinging my eyes. I yanked the ladder down behind me, placing a foot on the desert-smooth concrete. The fog had rolled back in, thick as wool. I fumbled for my radio. Dead, no signal. I raised my gun and ran toward the villa's front entrance. Inside, the foyer was empty, lights flickering. I passed the mirrored wall where I'd seen the message, "I know you." Now it was blank, just reflection. My footsteps echoed. I climbed the stairs 2 at a time, reaching the hallway where the bedroom doors had swung open. They were now closed. I pressed my shoulder into one. Locked. I kicked. The door splintered inward. Inside, the grand bed was stripped of sheets. Pillows lay torn. The black and white phones were gone. In their place, a group of empty frames, hanging askew on the wall. The frames were empty. I swept my flashlight across them. No photos. Beneath each frame, labels. Her, him, me, us. I pressed my palm to the nearest frame. The wall behind it was cold plaster, no image. Then the lights cut out. I was in total darkness. My breathing rattled in my ears. I clicked on my flashlight. On the far wall, scrawled in what looked like blood, the same words from the mirror. "I know you." Below them, a new line, fresh and dripping, "Now you know me." The door behind me clicked shut. Then footsteps approached, slow, deliberate, echoing down the hallway. I held my breath, gun raised, as the footsteps circled outside the door, a whisper on the other side. "Did you find what you were looking for?" I didn't answer. The hallway light flickered back on, revealing the door handle slowly turning. I squeezed the trigger, but the hallway snapped away. The ceiling spun, floor dropped, and I woke in my cruiser, headlights on, engine idling. The villa was gone, replaced by a cliff face and an empty guard shack. My door was unlocked, the keys on the seat. In my lap lay a single Polaroid, me, asleep in the driver's seat, eyes closed, mouth slack. I woke with a start, heart pounding, hands gripping the steering wheel as if it might vanish. The cruiser's interior was dark, save the glow of the dashboard. I looked down at the Polaroid on my lap, me asleep, oblivious, the reflection in the glass window behind me showing that villa's silhouette in the fog. My blood ran cold. I tried the engine. It sputtered but caught. Headlights fired up, illuminating the narrow stretch of cliff road. No guard shack, no villa, just the road's edge and a drop into darkness. I shoved the Polaroid onto the passenger seat and floored the accelerator. The engine roared, tires skittering over gravel. Every curve felt like another loop into madness. I kept the beam low to avoid blinding oncoming traffic, though there was none. Just me and that open abyss. I reached for my radio with one hand, but no signal. My seatbelt clicked as I strapped in, hands back on the wheel, knuckles white. I checked the rearview mirror, empty road. Then I saw movement in the mirror's corner, an outline flickering behind me, like headlights that weren't mine. I glanced up. Nothing. The road narrowed, cliffs pressing in. Fog rolled in again, seeping across the hood. My headlights cut arcs through the mist. I remembered the voice. "Sleep tight." It had been soft, intimate, almost a farewell. But there was no one in sight now. The memory felt wrong. No one but me could have whispered. I shook my head, trying to force the hallucination away. I had to get back to the station, file my report. No, file my confession. I'd never seen anything like this, and the chain of events defied reason. My eyes flicked to the passenger door as I pressed the accelerator. The Polaroid lay face down now, the back stained with something dark. I reached over with my left hand to flip it. My right hand drifted toward the holster, fingers brushing the grip. I lifted the photo. This time, it showed me sitting at the villa's dining table. My badge on the table, the Polaroid in my hand. Looking up at the camera with disbelief. Behind me, in the corner of the frame, the faint shape of a woman's profile. Face hidden by a hood. I dropped the photo, heart thumping so loud I thought the car would shake. I braked hard, tires screeching. The Polaroid slid under the passenger seat. I flipped on the overhead interior light, nothing but the dashboard and my shaking reflection. I killed the headlight switch, shutting out the road. Darkness pressed against the glass. I leaned forward, breathing hard. The radio crackled to life with static. "Unit 42, Unit 42, do you read?" I punched the radio button. "Dispatch, this is 42. I'm on Pacific Coast Highway near mile marker 35. The villa's gone. Static, then a voice. Sir, what's your status?" I swallowed. "I need backup, emergency extraction." More static. "Copy, hang tight." The line clicked dead. I killed the overhead light, slid the car into drive, and eased forward. The road curved sharply and I rounded it to find another cruiser idling under a street light. 2 officers stood outside, flashlights dancing across the fog. I pulled over, cut the engine, and killed the lights. Their torches swung toward me. One officer called out, "Lieutenant Harper?" It was the sergeant from earlier. His face looked drawn. You okay? He imagined panic stayed on my face. I unhooked my seatbelt, opened the door, and stepped out into the cold that smelled of ocean spray. They fanned out as I approached. "We scoured the villa," the sergeant said, voice low. "No signs of you, no structure, no cameras, nothing on the land records shows a property there." I clenched my jaw. "What about the cliff, the guard shack?" He shook his head. "Empty lot, zoning maps show nothing." My hands went to my pockets. The last Polaroid crumpled in my fist. I pulled it out. "It's happening," I said, voice raw. "It's real." The sergeant's brow creased. "We need to take a statement, Lieutenant." Inside the cruiser, I sank into the passenger seat as they wrote notes. The passenger side door stood open, fog curled in. My uniform smelled of damp wool and cigarette smoke. I stared at the recorder placed between us. I cleared my throat. "It started with a 911 hang-up," I said, tone steady despite the tremor in my chest. "Villa on the cliff. No cameras, no guards, but empty rooms with panic panels and phones dangling. Crawlspace tunnels, storm shelters sealed beneath. Polaroid photos of every one of us inside, taken after hours. The walls itself warped. Panic buttons installed, pressed, then vanished. And that voice." I paused. "The voice belongs to someone who shouldn't be here, someone who shouldn't exist." They asked questions, dates, times, locations. I answered as clearly as I could, but each utterance felt wrong, like speaking through a foreign tongue. The recorder clicked off. I rubbed my temples. The sergeant handed me a bottle of water. "We'll get you back," he said gently. I drank, tasting salt. "There's more," I whispered. "I never found the bodies." He looked at me. "Bodies?" I nodded. "The villa's sub-basement under the storm shelter, crates of photos. A skeleton beneath the floorboards, too decayed to identify, but a woman's dress bone, like the ones in the Polaroids." His eyes widened. "We didn't find that." I closed them. "Of course not. Because this place isn't on any map, and the room reshapes itself." I felt every muscle in my face tighten. I saw a pair of eyes in the sub-basement high above me in the crawl space. Too large for any man, too reflective for a corpse. Something living. And it spoke my name. They scribbled more notes. I forced myself to keep breathing. The sergeant cleared his throat. "Lieutenant, do you want us to call in homicide?" I shook my head slowly. "Number because they'll see nothing. And they'll think I'm letting it go." I flipped the Polaroid onto the dash. "But I need to know who, or what, lives in the walls." A wind gust rattled the car. The lights flickered on the cruiser's dash. I looked out the tinted glass. The fog parted, and at the edge of the guard shack's empty lot, I saw a shape. A woman in a hooded robe, standing perfectly still, facing the road. She raised a hand, beckoning. I froze as the uniformed officers spun to look. Then she stepped back into the mist. The sergeant and I exchanged a look. I unshouldered my weapon. "I have to go back," I said. My voice was steady, but my hands shook. One more pass through the villa's footprint. Maybe I missed something. He reached out as if to stop me. I held up a hand. "If I don't go, I'll never rest. I'll keep seeing photos, hearing that voice." I exhaled slowly. And I need to know if this ends with finding her, or finding myself. I closed the door, slid behind the wheel, and shut off the overhead light. The sergeant's silhouette receded as I started the engine. Fog rolled back in, shelving along the asphalt. My headlights cut arcs through the white haze. I drove toward where the villa should have stood, where walls and corridors and closets waited to reshape themselves. My fingers drummed on the steering wheel. In the rearview mirror, I caught a flash of pale cloth around her ankles, gone when I blinked. The road ahead curved into darkness. We got back on PCH where the villa should have stood, only an empty lot flattened by recent grading work, bleeding fresh earth into the fog. My headlights carved through the mist and landed on a spray-painted outline in chalk, the faint rectangle of a foundation, 4 corner markers still in place, each labeled 1, 2, 3, 4. The dirt was churned as if heavy equipment had been dragged away at speed. I parked on the shoulder, cut the engine, and sat in the halo of my headlights listening. The asphalt was silent. No surf crash, no creak of floorboards. Just the drone of my idling engine and the steady drip of condensation from the fog lights. I killed the motor, grabbed my flashlight, and stepped onto the lot. The air was cold in my lungs, tasting of earth and something metallic. I surveyed the corner markers, then moved to marker 1. There, footprints, my own boot treads, pressed deep into the soft ground, along with a smaller, high-heeled print beside them. I shone the light across the lot. More footprints forming a path that led toward the neighboring property, then vanished at its overgrown hedge. I followed the trail. On the other side, I emerged into a narrow clearing between 2 estates. One vacant lot where the villa had been, the other a decrepit 2-story house boarded up years ago. Its windows gaped like dark eyes. I paused at the hedge line, peering through the brambles. A single upstairs window was broken, the pane missing, and behind the jagged sill I saw movement, a flicker of candlelight. The trail of footprints cut through the mud to that very window. I raised my radio. No signal, so I drew my weapon and approached. The front door of the old house sagged on its hinges. The candlelight came from the staircase upstairs. My flashlight beam danced across peeling wallpaper covered in handprints pressed into the damp plaster, smeared and ghost white. At the top of the stairs, the narrow hallway was lined with doors, one cracked open, a faint glow seeping out. I moved toward it. Outside, the candle sputtered in the draft. Flame bent like a plea for help. Inside the room, the walls were covered in photographs pinned haphazardly. The actress in her hooded robe, the actor's silhouette, the security guards, and dozens more. Emergency call operators, dispatchers, even anonymous neighbors. All faces twisted in mid-scream, eyes frozen wide. Beneath each photo, a note in neat script. Sleep well. You'll come, mine. The floor beneath was littered with empty matchbooks from a roadside motel in Baja California. I stepped back, heart slamming. A breeze tickled my neck, though there was no opening, and a whisper drifted from an adjacent room. You found us. It was 8 voices layered, unrecognizable yet familiar. My flashlight trembled as I lowered it to the floor. There, embedded in the carpet, lay a drenched Polaroid. Me, crawling through the crawlspace hatch, flashlight in hand. That moment before I emerged onto the deck. I knelt and picked it up, water dripping off the photo and pooling on the floorboards. Behind me, the candlelight flickered out. Panic surged. I whirled toward the door, only to find it closed, the handle cold and locked. I rammed it with my shoulder. It held. From the hallway came a muted thud, footsteps descending the stairs, measured and deliberate. I dialed 911 on my cell, no service. I pressed my ear to the door. The footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs, paused. A deep breath, slow. Then the candlelight returned through the keyhole below me, as if someone held it just under the door. I crouched, leveled my flashlight at the keyhole and saw a single eye, pale, unblinking, the iris shifting in the glow. It was too large, too still. The world felt as though it had slowed, the sound muffled. Heart slowed to match the beat of the foot on the bottom stair. Then the eye blinked. The eyelid was scratched, scarred, human, but not. The keyhole filled with a smile, crooked and knowing. I backed away fast enough to catch my heel on the carpet. I crashed to the floor, flashlight flying. In the beam's arc, I saw the door's wood grain ripple, buckle, as if alive, swelling outward. A low rumble filled the room. The floor vibrated. The photographs on the walls trembled and fluttered to the floor, faces down. I scrambled to my feet, chest heaving, and threw my shoulder into the door. The wood yielded with a creak, then collapsed in a splintered heap. I staggered into the hall. The candlelight trailed behind me, weaving like a dancer's skirt, leading me down the hallway. My radio crackled to life with a single voice. "Unit 42, are you there?" I pressed the mic. "Yes, I'm—" I glanced back. The candle floated 3 steps behind, no hand guiding it. Then I whirled forward and sprinted down the stairs, through the doorway, and burst into the hedge-lined clearing. Branches tore at my uniform. I leapt through the gap, landing on the grass of the vacant lot. I ran to my cruiser, slammed the door, locked it, and buried my head in my hands. The engine roared as I turned the key. In the rearview mirror, across the vacant lot, the candlelight wavered at the threshold of the decrepit house's front door, then blinked out. The radio buzzed. 42, backup is here, T. Status? I swallowed, voice raw. I'm coming in. I stepped out, leveled my flashlight at the old house, and realized with a gut twist that there were no more exit routes, no hedge gap, no driveway, only bramble walls closing in. The fog rolled thicker now, and I heard that multi-layered whisper once more, carried on the damp wind. You can't leave. I swung the cruiser's door open, grabbed my weapon, and advanced into the grass, each step unsure. The world shifted beneath me. The chalk outline of the villa's foundation crackling in neon chalk on the ground, numbers morphing into letters. Mine. The hillside behind me trembled, and the faint silhouette of the villa rose, brick by brick, skeleton walls rebuilding in the fog as I watched, paralyzed. Behind me, the 2 patrol cars rolled forward but stopped at the lot's edge, headlights sweeping useless beams into the mist. I turned to them, mouth open to shout, but silence swallowed my words. When I faced forward again, the villa stood complete, windows glowing, lights on every floor. The gates swung open. The fog parted, revealing one figure on the balcony, a woman in a hooded robe, hand outstretched halfway, as if waiting for me to join her. And then, as I stepped toward the steps, the gravel underfoot swallowed my boots, my footprints vanishing behind me, leaving no trace on the earth. That morning's grading had already smoothed. Only that chalk outline remained unchanged, mocking. The patrol cars remained miles away, silent sentinels to a house that reassembled itself just for me. I inhaled and exhaled, trying to steel my nerves. The sergeant's voice crackled once more over the radio. "Lieutenant, report." I pocketed the device. In the hush, the villa door opened on its own. The hall light blinked twice. Then, from within, came the softest whisper, carried on a breeze that smelled of salt and old paper. "Come home." The roar of the ocean faded as the villa's double doors closed behind me, plunging the entry hall into near darkness. My flashlight beam skimmed over the polished marble floor, the ornate inlay swallowing each glint of light. The air smelled of damp plaster and something acrid, like the tang of old emulsion and fear. Every footstep echoed, a countdown in my mind, reminding me that I was alone, backed into a house that built itself around me. I pressed forward down the grand corridor, past portraits whose subjects had once been faces in the crowd, now turned away, their painted eyes tracing my every move. The whisper came again, soft but urgent, from somewhere beyond the archway. This way. I felt, rather than heard it, a vibration under my boots. I followed the voice into a gallery lined with floor-to-ceiling windows, each pane looking out onto the shuddering surf below. The glass was fractured, spiderweb thin, yet unbroken. Through the mist, I saw footprints sailing across the water, trailing away into the foam as though the ocean itself lured them in. At the gallery's farthest end, a single door stood slightly ajar. I pushed it open and entered a library that smelled of mildew and old ink. Bookshelves arched overhead, bowing under the weight of countless leather-bound volumes. One shelf was empty, the space gouged as though someone had pried a tome free. I shone my light at the gap. A book lay on the floor, its cover torn away to reveal a hollow interior. Inside was another Polaroid, curled and yellowed. A photograph of this very library, taken at night, the flash illuminating rows of silent texts, and in the center, me, crouched between shelves, staring straight at the camera with wide, terrified eyes. I sank to one knee and turned the photo over. On the back, in spidery scrawl, 3 words: "Don't read me." My heart hammered. I pocketed the photo and the lights flickered. In that blackout, the scent of salt and decay grew stronger. My flashlight caught movement above on the mezzanine. A figure perched on the railing, head bowed. I swallowed and climbed the spiral stairs that led up. Each step groaned, as though the house itself protested my presence. At the top, the mezzanine stretched out in a horseshoe, overlooking the library below. The figure remained motionless, a silhouette against the broken window. I called out, voice hoarse, "Who are you?" No answer. I took another step forward. The beam caught a ledger resting on a nearby stand, its pages open to a list of names, followed by dates and single words. Arrived, watched, became. The final entry was today's date, my name scrawled in bold, here. Beneath it, blank space invited another note. The whisper drifted around me. Write me in. The hairs on my neck bristled. My flashlight flickered toward the railing. The figure had vanished. A low rumble shook the floor. The mezzanine railing rippled like the surface of water. Books tumbled from the shelves below, their pages fluttering outward, filling the air with a Piper's storm. The dust settled just as abruptly, revealing the countertop of a hidden desk that hadn't been there moments before. On it lay an antique fountain pen and a leather-bound journal. The cover was embossed with the villa's monogram and 3 concentric circles, like eyes staring out. I hesitated, then lifted the pen. It felt impossibly heavy in my hand. As I reached to open the journal, the whisper surged behind me in a chorus of voices, urgent and overlapping. Sign, record, stay. I stared at the blank page, the ink nib poised. If I wrote my name, would I be trapped here forever? Another entry in an eternal ledger? Or would the act of acknowledgement release me? My vision blurred with sweat and doubt. The storm of voices intensified, demanding, coaxing. I lowered the pen and closed my eyes, resisting the pull. When I opened them again, the journal lay on the floor, pages splayed, footprints pressed into the leather as though someone had danced across it. The pen was gone. In the hush that followed, the door I'd entered through creaked shut. I raced back, but the spiral staircase had vanished, replaced by a blank wall of books that extended upward into darkness. Panic seized me. I fumbled for my radio. Dead. My flashlight wavered, nearly extinguishing. Then, behind me, the gallery archway glowed faintly. I turned, heart in my throat, and saw the path of candles lining the floor, dozens of them, leading back toward the entry hall. Their flames flickered in rhythm, beckoning. Somewhere in their flame-lit path, the whisper came again. "Follow me home." Resolute, I moved toward them, each step weighted by dread. The library doors swung open as I approached, revealing the entry hall bathed in candlelight. There, on the grand foyer table, lay a contract inscribed on vellum, my name at the top, followed by blank spaces beneath, a promise to stay or to leave. The candlelight guttered as I stepped into the grand foyer, the hush settling over the villa like a shroud. The vellum contract lay before me, its ink still wet where my trembling hand had traced my name. Beneath it, blank spaces waited for my final promise, the pen perched as if daring me to decide my fate. My reflection in the polished marble looked gaunt, hollowed by exhaustion and the weight of what I'd witnessed. The whisper had been clear. Choose. But every instinct screamed that signing would bind me here forever. I closed my eyes and pressed my forehead against the table's cool edge, feeling the wood grain under my uniform. The candles encircling me flickered in unison, their flames leaning as though alive, reaching toward the contract. I inhaled the acrid scent of melted wax and old parchment, bracing myself against the tug of the villa's will. Memories of footprints in the sand, the Polaroids, the hidden tunnels, the voices rising in chorus. They came flooding back, each one a thread in the web that held me. My fingers brushed the edge of the paper, the vellum bending beneath my touch. I could feel something beneath it, movement like the slow unfurling of a living thing. I withdrew my hand. The candles shivered, their glow dimming to an ashen pulse. In the silence, the villa exhaled, a low, resonant sigh that set the chandelier swinging overhead. Crystalline droplets tinkled as they struck the marble, scattering light and shadow across the foyer. I steadied myself and looked up. The portraits lining the walls had changed, the faces now turned to watch me, their painted eyes sparkling with expectation. I recognized one, an ancestor of the villa's architect, eyes eerily identical to my own in the old family album I'd once researched for a cold case. My pulse thundered. If the house knew me, down to the shape of my iris, then the whispers in the crawl space, the invitation to write me in, had never been metaphor. The ledger in the library, the names etched beside arrived, watched, became. They mapped out a destiny I was meant to follow. My radio crackled to life one last time, the sergeant's voice clipped and distant. "Lieutenant, we're pulling you out. GPS coordinates say you're still at the villa. Confirmation?" I pressed the mic to my lips. "Coordinates don't matter here," I whispered, voice ragged. "This place isn't on any map." The line went dead, swallowed by static and a slow rush of wind that spiraled through the open front doors. I rose, eyes fixed on the contract, and reached for the pen. The air thickened, pressing in on me. Flames surged along the candle wicks, flaring in an instant to cast the room in stark light. In that blaze, I saw the pen's nib twist into a talon, the ink pool dark and viscous as blood. My hand froze above the paper. Behind me, a door creaked open. Footsteps echoed down the circular staircase I'd never noticed before. My flashlight lay on the floor by the entrance, useless in this radiance. I turned to see a figure descending, tall, robed, face hidden in shadow. The flicker of candlelight revealed the edge of a mask, smooth and expressionless, painted with my badge number in precise strokes. I swallowed hard. The robed figure paused at the base of the stairs, lifting a gloved hand. The whisper rose to a roar in my mind. "Stay." The mask tilted, and though I could not see the face, I heard my own voice speak from behind it, calm, unyielding, echoing through the hall. Welcome home. Terror clenched my chest, but beneath it lay a dark curiosity. I glanced down at the contract. The final blank space waiting for my signature. If I signed, would the haunting end? Or would I become another name in the margins, another face in the portraits? If I refused, would the villa tear itself down around me? Or would I wander its halls forever, lost between rooms that rebuilt and corridors that closed? The robed figure took a slow step forward, the mask's painted eyes glinting as it raised the pen. I realized then that I was never alone. The villa had always been writing my story, preparing my final entry. I felt the pen lifted, poised above the page, the ink trembling. I laid the pen across the vellum and stared at the final blank line, my last chance to choose. The masked figure in the robe stood motionless at the foot of the grand staircase, watching, waiting. Candlelight danced along the walls, flickering over the portraits that now seemed to watch with expectation. My thumb hovered over the pen's nib. A bead of sweat traced a line down my temple. All at once, the whispering storm in my mind calmed. I realized the choice was never about freedom or captivity, arrival or departure. It was about acknowledgement. The villa was not a place I entered. It was an extension of me, of the parts I tried to forget, obsession, guilt, the endless chasing of truth, no matter the cost. Every Polaroid, every hidden room, every name in that ledger had been a reflection of my own refusal to let go. I closed my eyes, exhaled slowly, and pressed the nib to the paper. In one fluid motion, I wrote a single word beneath my name. Acknowledged. The instant the ink dried, the air changed. The candles flared and then dimmed to a soft glow. The portrait's painted eyes softened, their gazes no longer accusing. The masked figure bowed its head, then reached out, lifting the contract and tucking it into its robe. In its other hand, it held the pen, now nothing more than a tarnished quill. I stepped back as the mansion exhaled, a low rumble that reverberated through the marble underfoot. The grand double doors before me swung open, revealing a corridor bathed in pale dawn light. Beyond lay the bishop pine trees of the canyon, the gray Pacific seas below, and my patrol cruiser waiting where I'd left it. A gentle breeze carried the scent of salt and sage. The masked figure turned toward the doors, gloved hand raised in silent benediction. With one final bow, it retreated into the hall, the mask tilting in what I understood as farewell. I walked toward the exit, each step measured, as if moving through water. Behind me, the library's spiral staircase reappeared, the crawlspace grate sealed flush with the polished floor. The panic button in the foyer hummed softly, lights steady. The Polaroids vanished from the mantelpiece. The photographs from the walls dissolved like mist. When I emerged onto the clifftop road, the mansion had vanished once again, leaving only the graded lot and 4 chalked markers that spelled out a single word in shifting letters. Home. The afternoon sun broke through the fog, warming my jacket, and I could feel the weight of every secret I'd carried lighten with each breath. I reached my cruiser, the door unlocked, keys in the ignition. In the passenger seat lay that final Polaroid, me signing the contract, pen in hand, mask standing behind me. But when I grabbed it, the photo was blank white, as if it had never been taken. I sat inside, gripped the steering wheel, and let the engines purr. Nothing about that place would ever make sense on paper. No footage, no property records, no missing person reports. Only me, and my own acknowledgement stitched into the walls of a house that lived on my memory. I started the car and drove on, the fog slowly lifting behind me, sunlight carving out reality again. Every so often, I'd glance in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see a robed figure or a flicker of candlelight on the horizon. But there was only the road and the steady promise of dawn. And sometimes, late at night, just as I'm about to drift off, I hear the faint scratch of pen on paper, and I wonder, what would you write if the house offered you your own ending? We got a 911 call. The address was familiar. It was just past midnight when dispatch came through, garbled, like the line was underwater. Unit 14, 911 call at 1428 Crestwood Drive. Caller reports, please hold. Static swallowed half the message. I thumbed the PTT and cleared my throat. Unit 14 to dispatch. Copy that location? No reply, just static, hissing like distant surf. I thumbed the mic again. Unit 14 to dispatch, do you read? Silence. My knuckles whitened against the steering wheel. Crestwood Drive, luxury gated cul-de-sac in the Hollywood Hills, the kind of place where the widows of old studio moguls live and where the weeds are always trimmed. I stared at the address on my in-car screen, bathed in dashboard glow. It was the same mansion from 3 years ago, the one with the private guard who never blinked. When I pulled up, the gates were halfway closed. The control box blinked red. I hit the button, gates groaned open, and I slipped inside. My cruiser's headlights carved a path through eucalyptus shadows. The house sat at the top of a switchback, its front facade outlined by lanterns that flickered, one bulb half burned, casting more shadow than light. The driveway was slick from earlier drizzle, and I could smell damp pine. I parked just inside the circular drive and killed the engine. The radio hissed, nothing. The rain began again, slow at first, then pounding the roof in a steady drumbeat. I stepped out in boots that squeaked on wet asphalt, badge clipped to my belt, flashlight and sidearm in hand. I paused, listening. Neighbors keep penthouses quiet at this hour, but behind the closed front door, I heard something. A soft click, like a latch turning. I called out, "Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, anyone inside?" No answer. I tested the handle, locked. I knocked once, hard, wood on wood. After a moment, the click came again. Door cracked. I pushed through, my flashlight sweeping across marble floors and Venetian plaster walls. Inside, the foyer was massive. High ceiling, a sweeping staircase. No furniture had been disturbed. No personal items lying around out of place. I could feel my pulse in my temples. I stepped forward, heels echoing, and radioed dispatch again. Unit 14, entry secured. No sign of occupant. I waited. Static. The storm rattled windows. Lightning flickered, and I saw framed photos on the walls. The same visage of an actress rumored to live here. Her laughing face and color, as if frozen in time. Beneath each photo was a brass plate with her name, or at least a name that sounded like hers. Each caption carefully misspelled, almost like a joke. My chest tightened. Something was wrong. I moved deeper, following the hallway to the drawing room. Candles lined a mantelpiece, guttering. Soft yellow light spilled, revealing an empty bottle of single malt on the coffee table. A fine, crystal glass sat beside it, half full, droplets beating down its side. I glanced at the doorway. It led to a library. Floor-to-ceiling shelves, old, leather-bound books, a ladder on wheels. On the desk, a laptop lay open, but the screen was dark, not asleep. Dead. I called into the room, voice low. "Ma'am, I'm here to help." No reply. I clicked on the laptop. Nothing. Just a black screen reflecting my face. I shone my light over the keyboard. The cursor blinked in the corner. My breath caught. The screen had been used recently. dust-free lines across the keys. A small post-it was stuck to the monitor's bezel. "Stop asking," in cramped handwriting. A soft thump came from upstairs. I drew a breath, half exhaled. Upstairs, private quarters. The thought hit me that whoever called dispatch never stayed downstairs. They led me up. I ascended the carpeted staircase, hand on the rail. At the landing, the long corridor stretched, doors closed on either side. A single light under one door glowed amber. I approached, noting the scuff marks on the jamb. Something had been forced. My gut turned over. I raised my flashlight and eased the door open. It was a guest bedroom. No one inside, curtains drawn, bed made, a vintage telephone on the nightstand, cord coiled. It rang, louder than it should. "Ring, ring." I froze, hand on my radio mic. The ringing stopped. My radio crackled. "Unit 14, status?" I whispered into it. No response. I glanced at the telephone. The handset was off the cradle, lying next to it like someone dropped it in a hurry. I picked it up. Dial tone. I put it back. Down the hall, the amber light under the next door winked out. Then the door opened from the inside. Crack. I caught a glimpse of silvery hair and a white bathrobe drifting back. "Help me," a voice rasped, so soft I almost missed it. The shape retreated. I stepped forward, light trembling, and saw nothing, just footprints and dust on the Burmese teak floor, leading to the master suite. I followed. Master bath door was ajar. Steam clung to the edges. I smelled soap, lavender. A towel lay on the floor, plastered by water. I saw footprints on the tile, wet. They ended at the glass shower door, which was clear, no frost, no fog. Inside, the water was still running, clear as tears. I flicked off the water at the handle, and the sound died. My reflection in the glass staggered, then steadied. I wiped the door. Nothing on the other side. Behind me, the bathroom door slammed. I spun, light arcing, to catch the latch swinging. My radio crackled again, louder this time. "Unit 14, status?" The voice sounded distant, echoing through plumbing. I pressed the PTT. "Dispatch, Static swallowed me. My heart pounded. I took a step back and nearly tripped over something. Looking down, I saw a photograph on the bath mat, a Polaroid. The actress's face peered up at me, pale, eyes wide, but the background was the bathroom. My flashlight beam in the reflection, and behind me, a shadow pressing against the door. I knelt, picked up the photo. Scribbled on the white border. "See you soon." I clipped it to my vest, holstered my light, and backed into the hall. At the end, the door to the dressing room stood open, light flickering inside. It wasn't on my way, but I felt drawn. I walked faster. Each breath came sharp, cold. The rain tapped mercilessly overhead, and the whole house felt alive, watching. Inside the dressing room, mirrors surrounded a chaise lounge. Dresses hung in glass-front closets. A single shoe sat on the floor, a stiletto with a drop of water on the heel. In the largest mirror, I saw it, not my reflection, but hers. Eyes blackened, mouth parted in a silent scream. I whirled around, empty. I looked back at the mirror. My reflection stood with the photo clipped to my vest, and beside me, written in condensation, "Don't leave." Then the radio crackled one final time, so loud my ears rang. "Unit 14, code 4, false alarm." I could only stand there, breathing, listening to footsteps behind me that didn't belong to me. I reached for my mic, nothing. Just static closing in, a promise of silence that would never end. I moved without thinking, every nerve burning as I crossed back through the dressing room toward the stairwell. My boots made almost no sound on the plush carpet, but I could hear my own heartbeat thudding in my ears. drowning out the drip of rainwater falling through a leaky section of roof somewhere above me. The footprint Polaroid clipped to my vest felt heavy against my chest. At the top of the stairs, I paused in the entry hall, flashlight beam cutting arcs through gathering shadows. The front door was still locked, but now I noticed something else. The wrought iron chandelier overhead swung ever so slightly, as if disturbed by a breeze, though all the windows were shut. I crept forward, feeling the air thicken, each step measured against an uneasy hush. Halfway down the corridor, the sound came again, a soft scraping, like fingernails dragging along plaster. I froze, radio mic in my hand. "Unit 14, I hissed. "Status." But static rasped my words away. The scraping grew louder, then stopped. Silence. My fingertips tingled as I pressed into the next room. It was the study, the one lined with portraits of family members whose gazes seemed accusatory in the dim light. The desk was piled with correspondence, handwritten letters, invitations, press clippings about the actress, her rise, her scandals. I stepped inside, swept my beam across the papers, and noticed a page torn from a notebook, stained with what looked like coffee or something darker. Written in hurried scrawl, "He knows too much." On the floor beside the desk lay a pair of gloves. Black leather, expensive, inexplicably damp. I bent down, picked one up. The fingers were stiff, still retaining the shape of a hand that had last worn them. I turned the glove over and saw the imprint of tiny metal studs, like something you'd see on a stuntman's gear. My pulse quickened again. I put the glove in my pocket. A sudden clatter from the glass front closet jarred me. I spun around, beam slicing through mirrors. Inside, a row of gowns hung in meticulous order, until one shimmered unnaturally, as if made of water. I approached, hand outstretched. The fabric pulsed. My fingertips brushed against it, and I recoiled as the closet door slammed shut on its own with a metallic bang. I stumbled back and hit the desk, papers flying. My light danced across the room, catching movement in the reflection of a fireplace screen. There, the outline of a figure, tall, angular, stood behind me. I whipped around, nothing. I looked back at the screen. The figure remained, head tilted, watching me. I stepped forward, hand raised. It dissolved like mist. I reached for my radio again. "Dispatch, I have a visual anomaly. Request immediate backup." My own voice sounded small, strained. No reply except static. My breathing shook. I grabbed a folded map off the desk, one of Crestwood Estates marked in red circles. Almost all the markers were recent: surgeries, production shoots, rehab stints. Then one scrawled line led off the page, the name of the street where I lived. My throat constricted. I dropped the map. The click of a door handle made me whirl. The door behind me, my exit, was now closed. I hadn't touched it. I approached, hand on the knob. I turned it slowly and swung it open. The hallway was different. The wallpaper was the same damask but stained, peeling, and waterlogged. A heavy scent of mildew replaced the sterile perfume I'd smelled earlier. My boots squeaked. You could keep no ritual immaculate here. I stepped forward. The corridor stretched farther, longer than before, and the light at the end flickered like a dying candle. A soft, indistinct whisper drifted from the darkness. "Why did you come?" The voice sounded muffled, as though speaking through walls. I kept walking, each footstep echoing unnaturally. The damp carpet shifted underfoot. I realized the hallway was sloping downhill, impossible in a mansion with all its grand architecture. At the end, a door, plain wood, no handle. It pulsed like flesh under my beam. I raised my hand. My glove pocket throbbed against the leather glove I'd stowed there. I closed my fist around it. The The door swung open before I could knock. Inside was a child's bedroom. Pink walls, a rocking horse, stuffed animals neatly arranged on a shelf. The room was immaculate, but the air felt heavy, ancient. Rain pattered against a small window. Under the window, a rocking chair moved gently, as if someone had just risen. The floor was scattered with Polaroids, images of the actress, the mansion, the forest behind the property, all annotated in red, ink, dates, times, initials. I bent to pick one up. At that moment, the door slammed behind me. The light bulb overhead burst with a crack, plunging me into darkness. My flashlight flickered, then steadied. In its beam, I saw scrawled on the wall in what looked like blood, "Don't forget." My radio crackled to life, louder than before. A voice, familiar, though I'd only heard it once, said, "They're in the trees." Then silence. My chest tightened. Above the door frame, I noticed scratches gouged into the wood, letters that spelled my name over and over. I swallowed. My flashlight caught a flicker at the doorway, the same silver hair, the ghostly bathrobe drifting through. The figure stopped in the hall, backlit by a pale glow. It lifted a finger to its lips, then vanished. I exhaled and turned to leave, but the rocking chair creaked once, twice, then slid to a stop. I knew in that moment that I was no longer alone in this house. The door behind me creaked open again, invitation or warning, I couldn't tell which. My hand shook as I stepped back into the hallway, the faint glow from the child's room vanishing behind me. The walls here were warped, panels bulging as though something pressed from the other side. My boots slipped on a slick patch, and I realized I was walking in water pooling across the floorboards. Cold ran up my spine. I flicked my light ahead and saw footprints carved into the shallows. Bare footprints, leading away toward a door at the far end that hadn't been there moments ago. The door was battered, paint peeling to reveal raw wood beneath. No handle, just a jagged hole where the metal plate had been pried free. I raised my flashlight, the beam trembling, and shone it through. Another corridor, but one choked with overgrowth. Ivy crawling up the walls, black vines wrapping around rusted picture frames, their glass shattered. The stench of rot was thick. Vague shapes moved among the foliage. Dolls missing eyes, mannequins dressed in moth-eaten suits, all arranged as if watching me pass. My breath caught. I stepped through the frame and immediately the door slammed shut behind me, plunging me into half-light. "Oh, okay," I whispered, pressing my back against the wall. My radio squawked, static, then my own voice warped. "Unit 14. And then a metallic clang interrupted me. I turned toward the sound, sweeping the flashlight slowly. A heavy trunk sat in the center of the hallway, battered leather straps undone. The lid creaked open on its own. Inside, bundles of Polaroids were stacked like files. I crossed to it, too cautious to hurry, every nerve braced for something to spring out. I flipped through the pictures. The actress in various rooms of the mansion, her expression blank, her reflection in mirrors, her silhouette in windows at dusk. Then I saw images I hadn't expected. Photos of me, in uniform, standing in front of my cruiser, daylight on my badge clearly visible, dated 2 months ago. My own face, unknowing, staring back. I dropped the Polaroid and retreated a step, heart pounding. The trunk lid slammed itself shut with a hollow thud. I wheeled around, scanning the corridor. The mannequins had shifted. One now stood directly opposite, head tilted, finger pressed to its lip in the same hush gesture I'd seen earlier. The ivy around it quivered as though breathing. I forced myself to move, ducking beneath loose vines that teased my hair. My light illuminated trophies on a mantel, a sheriff's star, tarnished, a pair of handcuffs, a blood-stained notebook. I hesitated, then pulled the notebook free. The cover read, in plain block letters, Confessions. Inside, pages scrawled with entries in different hands. Notes about the call logs, names, dates, odd observations. She asked for me by name. Camera malfunctioned just as I reached the front door. The voice on the line wasn't her voice. And then one entry. He'll find us here. The corridor ended in a shattered mirror that reflected a room behind me. I spun, empty. In the mirror, though, the room appeared intact. A Victorian parlor, oil paintings of stern ancestors, a grand piano with its keys blackened by soot. The mirror's surface rippled like water as though disturbed. My pulse raced. I took a breath and stepped forward, passing through the mirror as if it were mist. The glass warbled around me, then solidified behind my shoulder. I emerged into that parlor. The air was warm, scented with tobacco and aged wood. Dust motes drifted in the beam of my flashlight. The piano bench was pushed back, and on its seat lay a single sheet of music, handwritten, titled Lullaby for the Lost. I knelt, uncoiling the paper. Notes were circled in red ink, 16 measures marked with small blood-red drops. I listened. Outside, thunder rolled. In the hush, I thought I heard someone humming the melody softly down the hall. I pocketed the sheet and moved on, up a short flight of stairs I hadn't noticed. At the top, the door stood ajar, light bleeding out. I stepped in. It was the guest bedroom again, but changed. The walls now stripped to bare plaster. The window pried open, shutters swaying. Rain blew in horizontal sheets, plaster dust coating the floor. The phone sat on the nightstand, handset on its cradle, but the red indicator light blinked, signaling a voicemail waiting. I picked it up. On the display, a single number, 1. I pressed play. James, my name, clear, it's me. I never left. I've been here, waiting. You can find me if you want. Then nothing. Just a click. My blood ran cold. I set the phone down, and from behind the bed came a shuffling sound, soft, deliberate, like someone standing and taking steps. I spun toward the headboard. Nothing visible, but the mattress dipped as though carrying weight. I edged closer. A long shadow detached from the wall and stretched to meet me. I shone my light down and saw it was my uniform shirt, hanging from a chair, freshly laundered, glinting with dampness. Below it lay my badge. I dared to step forward, hand outstretched. My fingers brushed the silver star. It felt impossibly cold. I snatched it up. The room seemed to exhale. The phone shrieked to life, piercing. I nearly dropped the badge. The ringtone echoed as though in a cavern. I answered on instinct. "Dispatch," I said. No answer, just static. Then, "Unit 14, do you copy?" My voice echoed back. Behind me, the sound of the mattress creaking. I turned. A pale hand emerged, gripping the edge. I swallowed. "I'm here," I whispered. The hand froze. I swallowed again. The phone slipped from my grasp, clattering to the floor. Downstairs, a distant voice called my name. My name echoed through the hallways, carried by the wind blowing through the broken window. I clutched my flashlight and badge, pushed past the bed. The corridor beyond was flooded, rippling, stretching impossible distances. Each step forward felt heavier, as though wading through tar. I followed the voice, my voice, calling insistently, softly, urging me deeper. And then I realized it wasn't me calling. I couldn't tell which way led out. Footsteps echoed behind me, mismatched. One set rushing, one set dragging. The walls closed in, the inked notes on the wallpaper dancing. The faint glow of that child's rocking chair light shone ahead, beckoning me back to where it all began. My shadow stretched long, mingling with another that didn't belong to me. I broke into a run toward the light, feeling something brush my arm, feathery, like whispers. The doorway loomed. I burst through. I was back in the foyer. Rain poured through the shattered skylight, drenching the marble floor. The front door stood open now, swollen wood creaking. I stumbled forward, toward escape, toward air that wouldn't suffocate me underground in that labyrinth. As I reached for the door, I looked back once. At the top of the stairs, just beyond the chandelier's swinging arc, she stood, bathrobe dripping, hair drenched, eyes hollow. She lifted her hand in a slow salute, a farewell or a welcome, I couldn't tell. Then she was gone. I stepped out into the courtyard. Somewhere beyond the gates, sirens wailed, finally arriving, or so I hoped. My heart pounded as I looked up at the mansion, its windows dark and unblinking. My flashlight flickered and died. I was alone in the rain, clutching my badge, the Polaroid, the badge again, and something deeper I couldn't name. And somewhere in the halls behind me, I could still hear my name whispered. I pressed forward into the courtyard, rain soaking through my uniform as thunder rumbled overhead. The gates stood open now, yawning wide like a wound. I crossed the slick stone path, boots slipping, and reached the wrought iron barrier. My fingers traced the chill metal. Each groove gouged by rust looked like a scratch across bone. Behind me, the mansion's silhouette loomed. Windows dark, the still broken skylight above the foyer spilling intermittent shafts of lightning. I turned back toward the house, compelled by a pull I couldn't explain. The soft echo of my name drifted on the wind. My breathing came in ragged gasps as I climbed the few steps onto the front porch. The heavy oak door, once firmly locked, now hung ajar, its frame splintered. The smell of old wood and fresh rain mingled in my nostrils. I stepped inside, the door swinging shut behind me with a groan, sealing me in. The foyer was transformed. The marble floor was now cracked, sections flooded with water swirling in tiny eddies. The chandelier lay shattered in fragments across the carpet runner. I half expected the portraits lining the walls to be gone, but each remained, faces staring down, hollow-eyed. One portrait had fallen askew, its brass plate reading a name I didn't recognize. I reached out to straighten it, and the wood panel behind rattled, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Compelled by dread, I descended. Each step was slick, coated in the same pool of water, and the air grew cold, clammy, smelling of earth and decay. My flashlight beam caught on the rough walls, unfinished concrete, rebar protruding like rusted veins. At the base, the stairwell opened into a long tunnel, low ceiling, walls lined with dozens of Polaroids pinned by tarnished nails. I recognized faces in the pictures. Crew members, studio guards, caterers, unknown names scribbled in pencil. Beneath each photo, a date and time, all within the past week. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. I walked the length of the tunnel, past dozens of images, each one a testimony to someone who'd vanished. The floor sloped downward, water dripped from unseen cracks, pooling around my boots. At the far end, a dim light flickered, yellow, like lantern flame. I approached and found a makeshift desk illuminated by a single bulb hanging from a frayed wire. On it lay an open ledger, yellowed pages filled with names, addresses, times of 911 calls and notes. Caller disconnected upon arrival. No signs of life. Property vacated. The final entry was blank except for my name, date, and time, tonight's call. Beneath, a single phrase scrawled in shaky handwriting. "Meet me below." A hollow emptiness opened in my chest. I flipped through more pages, dozens of blank entries, each waiting for someone else to arrive. The bulb flickered and went dark, plunging me into blackness. My flashlight sputtered as I raised it, revealing that the tunnel walls were now covered in words, carved deep. "You never left." I froze, every nerve on fire. A soft scraping started behind me, like fingernails along concrete. I turned, sweeping my beam down the corridor I'd come from. The Polaroids quivered, shifting in their nails. The sound grew closer, echoing from around a bend. My heart thundered. I took a step back, stumbled over a loose tile, and caught myself against the desk. Papers fluttered, and the ledger slid to the floor, heartbeats sketched in its margins. The scraping stopped. Silence pressed in until I could hear only my breathing. Then, from somewhere above, a distant voice, faint, tired, called my name. Lieutenant Reed. It was my old partner's voice, unmistakable. My partner, who'd vanished 2 years ago after a night shift, never found. I swallowed hard, stepping toward a narrow ladder against the wall that led upwards. The rungs were metal, slick with moisture. I climbed, each rung groaning, until I broke through into a cramped crawl space bathed in pale moonlight, filtering from a broken skylight. I paused to catch my breath, shoulder pressed against cold brick. The crawl space opened into the attic, a vast, half-finished loft filled with crates and furniture covered in tattered sheets. Dust motes drifted through the beam of my flashlight. I stepped forward, ducking beneath a low beam, and saw against the far wall a row of chairs facing a large projection screen. The screen sat blank, but in front of it, on a small table, sat an old film reel projector, its reels turning slowly on rusted spindles, as though powered by a phantom hand. I approached, light shaking. The projector clicked and whirred, and the screen flickered to life, casting ghostly images across the dusty rafters. The film showed footage of the mansion. Exterior shots, the front door swinging open, my cruiser pulling into the driveway, my boots stepping onto the marble floor. Then it switched to interior scenes. My own patrol car's dash cam, the radio static, the hallway, the Polaroid of the actress, the broken picture frame, and then a shot of me, climbing the stairs, flashlight in one hand, badge gleaming, unaware that a dark shape crouched in the shadows behind me. My breath caught in my throat. I slammed my hand onto the table. The projector sputtered and stopped, the screen going black. The attic fell silent. Then, from somewhere behind me, a door creaked open. I whirled around, light sweeping. The crawlspace hatch had closed. The one I'd just emerged from was gone, sealed flush against the rafters. The only exit was the floorboards before me, where a hatch now lay, its handle freshly oiled. I lifted the hatch. It groaned, revealing a metal ladder descending into darkness. The voice whispered again, closer this time, just over my shoulder. "You shouldn't have come back." I stood at the ladder's edge, torn between retreat and pursuit. The sound of distant sirens had faded. The mansion above was quiet, as if sealed in a tomb. Below lay the unknown, and beneath that, perhaps the answers I'd sought, or the end of me. I took a breath, gripped the ladder, and began to climb down. I swung my legs off the ladder and dropped into ankle-deep water on a cold, concrete floor. The ladder clanged shut above me, sealing out the faint attic light. My flashlight bobbed in my hand, its beam slicing through the blackness. The air was thick, musty, and the walls curved inward. This wasn't part of the original foundation. I was in a subterranean chamber, its ceiling low, ceiling pipes dripping. The only light came from my torch. Ahead, the pool of water stretched into darkness. I took a cautious step forward, and ripples sprung out in widening rings, disturbing something beneath the surface. I swallowed, recalling the Polaroid dripping on the bath mat, the echoing footsteps, the promise of voices that weren't mine. My partner's voice, Lieutenant Reed, still thrummed in my memory. I pressed on, boots sloshing. After about 20 paces, I reached a fork, 2 low passages branching left and right. The left tunnel was narrower, walls slick and covered in moss. The right passage widened into what looked like an old utility hallway, its ceiling dotted with corroded junction boxes. I hesitated, then followed the right, the sound of distant murmurs faint but insistently drawing me onward. As I walked, the walls began to host photographs pinned to wooden boards, landscape shots, security camera stills, aerial views of this property. Each image had scribbled notes. Camera 3, disabled at 2347, gate sensors looped, backup call suppressed. Every note had the same scrawl, small, tight, urgent. My heart pounded. I studied a shot of the driveway where I'd parked. My cruiser was in frame, headlights on. Behind it, a shadowy figure stood, unidentifiable. The timestamp read 0012. I heard a door creak ahead, so I quickened my pace. The hallway opened into a larger room, lit by a single bare bulb swinging on a frayed cord. In the center stood a rack of phones. Analog desk phones, cell phones, even a payphone handset hanging loose. Lines ran from them into a tangle of cables feeding into a rack-mounted switch. A digital display blinked. Line active. I approached the desk. On its surface lay a voicemail transcript, printed and pinned. 911 call received. Caller, anonymous. Said name, redacted. Location, undisclosed. Call disconnected at 0005 beneath. In red, repeat. My skin crawled. I flicked a phone off the hook. Static, then my own voice. Unit 14, status. The line went dead. I tried another handset. This one crackled with laughter. Distant, hollow, a child's laugh. I slammed it back. Behind me, a faint scraping began, metal against metal. I whipped around, light capturing the edge of what looked like a barred door at the far wall. I crossed the room, boots plopping through puddles, and approached. The bars were thick, set into the stone wall. Beyond them lay a small cell, just enough room for a cot and a thin blanket. On the bed lay a stack of Polaroids wrapped in twine. I glanced inside. The photos showed me, the actress, my partner, unidentified staff, all locked here behind these bars. The last photo showed an empty cell. Mine. I pressed my hand to the bars, wet from condensation. A low moan echoed through the chamber, soft, longing. I pressed my ear to the cold metal. The moan went silent, replaced by a whisper. Come in. My blood ran ice cold. I stepped back, jet beam trembling. The bars stretched upward, higher than the ceiling, into darkness. I realized no one could escape. I realized this trap was made for me. A klaxon blared somewhere deep in the tunnel. Red lights pulsed above the junction box. The digital display on the phone rack changed to read, Incoming. A phone rang. A rotary handset at the center. I reached with trembling fingers. The display now read, Last call. With a deep breath, I lifted the receiver. Lieutenant Reed, said the calm voice, my own partner's voice, clear as day. You've been bad about returning my calls. I didn't think I had to tell you where I'd be. Static filled the line. Then the caller whispered, I'm right beside you. I spun, beam arcing across the chamber. Water sprayed up around me as something lunged from the darkness. Just a shadow slipping past. The clank of bars swinging shut echoed above me. I threw myself at the rack, yanking cables free. The lights blinked out, the klaxon died. Silence crashed down. I scrambled backward, fist still clutching the receiver. My breathing thundered. I scanned for an exit. Only the pitch-black tunnel behind me. The phones were dead, the illuminated map blank. Above, faint footsteps pounded, urgent. I stumbled toward the corridor and plunged in after that receding echo. Darkness swallowed me. My flashlight flickered, then steadied. The water was deeper here, reaching mid-shin. Ivy clung to the walls, dripped with moisture. I moved forward blindly, guided by the wet stone underfoot. My fingers trailed along the mossy wall until they brushed cold metal. A ladder rung, ascending into a small opening. Relief surged. I climbed, hauling myself up into the unknown. The hatch opened into a closet-sized space under the stairs. Ceiling low. The front door keychain hangers lined one wall, each key labeled. Front, garage, gate, and dozens more. One hanger held only a tag. Your turn. A single key dangled from it. I reached out, heart thrumming, and took it. The doorknob on the closet swung open with a click, revealing the grand foyer once more. Lightning flashing through the skylight, rain hammering the marble. I stepped out, closing the closet door behind me. The key burned in my hand. I saw the front door, locked, of course, but the gate keys on the wall offered one labeled Gate. I pocketed the key for now. Sirens wailed faintly outside the gates. I knew I could use the key and get out, but I couldn't leave without answers. My flashlight beam swung upward, toward the upstairs landing. The child's room light pulsed through the floorboards, calling me back. The maddening tug of unfinished business. I checked the photo clipped to my vest, my partner's face, eyes pleading. I exhaled, squared my shoulders, and headed back up the grand staircase. Each step felt heavier than the last, but I pushed on, following the sound of quiet hums, whispers of laughter, of weeping. I reached the corridor, the dressing room door ajar, the amber glow flickering. It was time to finish this, or become another lost entry in that ledger. The corridor stretched before me like an open wound. I forced my boots forward, every step echoing in the hush, as the amber glow beneath the guest room door pulsed, beckoning me onward. My flashlight trembled in my grip, and my hand closed tighter on the key to the gate I'd pocketed. Behind me, the echo of water dripping from broken skylights punctuated the silence. I reached the guest room door and pushed it fully open. The room was stripped bare, walls scraped to bare studs, floorboards warped. The phone lay on the stand, handset beside the cradle. I stepped past it, toward the hallway beyond, and the door slammed shut with a slam that rattled the studs. My heart spiked, and I spun, pressing my shoulder against the wood. I tested the knob, locked. A soft humming started behind me, low and mournful. I whirled and saw it. The rocking chair, sliding back and forth on its own. The Polaroids were scattered across the floor. Images from every room I'd been in, every face I'd seen in the mirrors. They swirled around me on a sudden draft, lifted by some unseen hand, then stilled. The hush deepened, and I realized the humming was a lullaby, my partner's mother's lullaby, one he'd hummed after long shifts. His voice cracked on the final note. Sleep, my poor child. The walls seemed to breathe inward. The floor slanted, and I staggered, gripping the studs. Each beat of my heart thundered in my ears as I caught movement in the corner of my light. A tall silhouette with long fingers, rifling through a pile of old case files. I called out, but my voice was swallowed. The figure paused, then turned, and I saw empty sockets where eyes should be. Its mouth opened in a silent scream, but I heard nothing. Then it tilted its head, watching me with those hollow holes. I backed into the doorway, pressing my weight until the frame groaned. The rocking chair behind me screeched to a halt. The Polaroid settled on the floor, faces down. I pressed my palm to the door, feeling the wood tremble. The silhouette stepped closer, and I saw in its hand a Polaroid, my partner, alive, smiling behind the wheel of my cruiser. The date stamped. 2 nights ago. My breath hitched. The phone shrieked to life, ringing insistently. I jerked upright, flashlight beam swinging. I rounded the stand and picked up the handset. Static, then dispatch. Unit 14, please respond. The line crackled, and then my partner's voice cut through. James, they told me you'd come. My legs went weak. I closed my eyes, picturing him behind the radio mic, safe. But then the handset was wrenched from my hand, and the cradle clicked painfully behind me. I heard the silhouette behind me exhale, wet, rasping. My flashlight flickered, and when it steadied, the figure was gone. The walls had closed in, the room felt the size of a closet. I pushed on the locked door, and it gave way, swinging inward to reveal the hallway. Longer, darker, narrower. I stepped through, heart pounding, and the door slammed behind me. Corridor after corridor unfolded, each lined with mirrors reflecting rooms I'd never seen. Nurseries, ballrooms, kitchens in ruin. Through one mirror, I saw the actress's face pressed to the glass, eyes blacked out. Another showed my cruiser parked on a rain-slick road. In each reflection, I saw myself, older, wearier, haunted. Each reflection whispered my name. At the corridor's end was the front door, wide open, slanting moonlight across the threshold. I rushed toward it, boots splashing in shallow water. Just before I reached it, my radio crackled. James. Then my partner's voice, urgent. Behind you. I spun. At the center of the foyer, standing beneath where the chandelier once hung, was the silhouette again. This time in full light. It wore my uniform, neatly pressed, badge shining. Its face was my face, pale and hollow, eyes wells of darkness. It lifted a hand and pointed at me, then at the open door. I stumbled backward, heart stuttering. The silhouette stepped forward in perfect imitation of me. Its lips curved into a grin I've never made. Then it raised a hand, beckoning. I turned, ran across the threshold into the courtyard and into the rain. The gates loomed ahead, closed. I pulled the key from my pocket, inserted it, and the lock clicked. I shoved, but the gate didn't budge. I tested the other gates, none would open. My breath rasped in the night air, thunder cracked, but no sirens came. Behind me, the mansion's windows lit, each one glowing with the flicker of candles. The silhouette appeared at every window, pressing its hollow face against the glass, mouth opening as though to scream. I stepped back. Key dropped from my trembling fingers and the gates swung inward as if invited. I froze, heart in my throat. A single Polaroid floated down from the sky, landing face up at my feet. I picked it up. In the photograph, I stood in a rain-soaked courtyard, just as I was now. But behind me, in the open door, stood the actress, pale and still, lips curved in the same faint, cruel smile. My radio squawked one last time. Unit 14, call terminated. I looked back at the mansion, then at the Polaroid. I tucked it into my pocket and stepped through the gates. The moment I did, the candles snuffed out, the windows went dark, and the gates slammed shut behind me. I walked down the drive into the fog, but I could still hear the echo of boots behind me, matching my pace. I know they'll be watching. I kept walking, the fog closing behind me like a curtain, each breath a cloud in the cold night air. my boots sank into damp gravel as I followed the winding road away from the gates. Every muscle in my body screamed to run, but my legs moved at a mechanical pace, driven by dread and something deeper, a need to understand why my own reflection had smiled at me from that open doorway. Thunder rumbled overhead, and I looked back once. The mansion sat atop the hill like a dark leviathan, its windows black holes in the fog. The gates were sealed, and beyond them I could just make out the silhouette of the actress, her head tilted to one side, watching me go. I swallowed hard, pressed my flashlight button. Its beam barely cut through the mist, and set off down the road, gravel scattering underfoot. As I descended Crestwood Drive, the hush of the estate faded into the quiet hum of the city at night. A lone street lamp flickered ahead, illuminating a row of parked cars. I approached one, a silver sedan, and saw my radio blinking on the driver's seat as though waiting for me. My heart lurched. How had it gotten there? I opened the door and reached in. The radio handset lay next to a Polaroid taped to the dashboard. I unfolded it. A picture of the studio where the actress had first risen to fame. Behind the camera crew there was a shape, me, kneeling, badge gleaming, as if mid-investigation. The timestamp, 16 years ago. I pressed the mic. Unit 14 to dispatch. My voice shook. I'm out of the property. I need... Static cut in, and then the dead officer's voice. You never left. I slammed the door shut. My reflection stared back from the window, hollow-eyed, exhausted. I backed away as the engine roared to life without a key. The sedan lurched forward, rolling toward me with headlights blazing. I dove aside as the car swerved and came to a halt against a lamppost, crunching metal on stone. I stumbled back, heart racing. The driver's door opened, empty. Rain fell in heavy sheets now, thrumming on the roof of the car. In the puddle at its front tire, I saw the reflection of the actress, her face inches from mine, pale as moonlight, her lips curved in that same haunting smile. I recoiled, and she vanished as the puddle shimmered and rippled. I backed up the street, heading for the nearest crossroad. The lamps flickered out, one by one, and I was swallowed by darkness. My flashlight cut a narrow path, but even its beam felt weak. And in its glow, I saw more Polaroids plastered to stop signs, to the pavement, each one a moment I'd lived. Me on patrol, me walking into the drawing room, me pausing at the guest room door. I was in every photograph, every scene. There was no escape. And yet I ran, adrenaline propelling me, past silent houses where windows stared like eyes. My breathing was ragged, every step a battle. I reached the crossroad and stopped at the traffic light, green for go, but no cars moved. The world around me hummed with anticipation. Then, from the shadows at the side of the road, I heard it. A soft whisper, almost lost in the wind. Lieutenant Reed. I turned. In the gloom stood my partner. His uniform drenched, face lit by the lamp's dying glow. He raised a hand in greeting, eyes sad and distant. Relief flooded me. I stepped toward him. He opened his mouth to speak, and I heard my own voice emerging, thin and broken. You're alive. His head tilted, and then everything shifted. His face blurred in the flicker of the lamplight, features melting into my own. His eyes became mine, and mouth twisted into that same hollow grin. I fired a shot into the night, its report tearing through fog. The figure did not fall. Instead, the form faded into a swarm of Polaroids that whipped around me like a vortex. The light returned. Cars began to roll through the intersection again, and the world snapped back into place, or at least a semblance of it. I stood alone at the crossroad, drenched, disoriented, badge in hand, key in pocket, Polaroids fluttering to the ground around me. The rain washed them away, one by one, until only the leather glove remained, slick, studded, bearing the imprint of someone else's hand. A siren approached in the distance, real this time. I dropped to my knees, gathering up that single glove. My heart pounded as I heard footsteps behind me, slow, measured. I looked up to see the silhouette again, standing on the curb opposite the sedan, arms crossed, watching me. I tucked the glove into my pocket and stood. The siren grew louder. Headlights pierced the fog. A patrol SUV rounded the corner, red and blue spinning. I raised a hand, motioning it to stop. The driver flicked the spotlights, illuminating the empty street. I walked toward the SUV, every step feeling like a departure from something I could never reclaim. But as I reached the door, the silhouette stepped beside me. I looked down, expecting darkness, but its hand rested on my shoulder, cold and real. I froze, hand on the door handle. The siren's wail shattered the night. Then the spotlight hit me and I saw no backup officer, no partner. Just me, alone, eyes hollow, badge dull. The SUV door opened. A uniformed deputy leaned out, flashlight trained on my face. "Lieutenant Reed?" he called, voice tense. I nodded, voice caught in my throat. "You're on Channel 3 for medical, exhaustion. Let's get you back." I let him help me into the SUV, sliding onto the vinyl seat. As the door closed, I caught one last glimpse of the silhouette at the curb, still there, thinning into mist. The SUV pulled away, tires hissing on wet asphalt. Through the rear window, I saw Crestwood Drive fade into fog. In the seat pocket lay that glove, studded and cold. I reached for it once, then settled back, every nerve on edge. And as the SUV carried me away, I realized the questions I needed answers to weren't the ones I'd had when I arrived. They were deeper, darker, unsettling in their simplicity. Why was I the only one who ever came back? The patrol SUV's taillights receded into the haze, leaving me alone on the slick asphalt with the cold glove in my hand. Every instinct screamed to discard it, to leave this nightmare behind, but I tucked it into my pocket instead. The rain eased, trading its drumbeat for a soft patter. I stood in the middle of the street, coat plastered to my back, and realized the world had gone unnervingly quiet. No distant sirens, no traffic hum, only my breath and the thrum of the glove against my thigh. I slid my hand into my pocket and felt another object, stiff, rectangular. I drew it out, the last Polaroid face down. Turning it over, I saw the actress's face again, eyes hollow, mouth curved in that same knowing half-smile. But this time, there was something new. Behind her, in the shadows of the photo, stood another figure. Me, a silhouette, pointing toward the gate. The timestamp read 0000, as though the moment I'd stepped outside had been recorded before it happened. The street lamp above me flickered. I looked up, expecting it to die, but instead its beam steadied, casting a pool of light around my feet. In that pool, I saw footprints appear, bare footprints, pressed into the gravel as though someone had literally stepped out of the photograph and into the world. I looked down at my boots, caked in mud, but no bare skin showed. The footprints didn't belong to me. A soft sigh whispered from the dark, "You found the proof." I swung my flashlight in the direction of the sound. No one was there. Only the empty street stretching uphill toward Crestwood Gates, still closed. Yet the sigh came again, closer this time, accompanied by the distant echo of metal scraping. The gate's lock turning, though no hand turned it. I glanced at the gates, only 50 yards away now, and saw them ease open by themselves. The actress's silhouette appeared in the threshold, then another behind her, my partner, mouth opening in that hollow mimicry. They stepped forward together, dissolving into fog that drifted down the driveway like spilled breath. I should have turned and run. Every fiber of my being urged retreat. But I took a step forward instead, drawn by something I couldn't name. A need to close the loop, to face the thing that had stolen years, calls, even my own reflection. I followed the fog up the drive, boots slipping, wind stirring the gravel. As I reached the gates, the glove in my pocket burned against my leg. I drew it out and slipped it on, its leather molded perfectly to my hand, the studs pressing into my palm. In the open field of the mansion's gates, it felt alive, as though pulses moved through it, guiding me. The fog parted, revealing the courtyard beyond illuminated by stray lantern light. No candles this time, just moonlight and the glove's faint warmth. The front door stood open again, yawning into the darkness within. I keyed my flashlight to high and stepped through, each footstep echoing a lifetime of unanswered questions. Inside, the foyer was empty. No shattered chandelier, no flooded floor. The plush carpet was pristine, walls spotless. Only one thing remained, the Polaroid pinned to the mirror above the entry table. I approached and found the photograph of me, standing under the same mirror, badge gleaming. A picture from before any of this had happened. Tucked behind it, a small note read, "The first call never ends." I flipped the note over. On its back was scrawled a single word, "Again." I stood in the stillness, glove-covered hand trembling as I stared at that question. The silence pressed in, pregnant with promise and threat. The mansion around me felt alive, as though it waited for my answer. I could leave, walk back down Crestwood Drive, call in sick, and pretend it was a hallucination, a fever dream sparked by years of unsolved cases. But as the glove pulsed against my palm, I realized the truth: the call never ends, and I was always going to answer. My eyes lifted to the foyer mirror. There, behind me, in the reflection, she stood, the actress, pale as marble, smiling. And behind her, a second figure, myself, silhouetted, beckoning. I took a step forward toward the mirror and whispered my reply. Yes.